Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, preemptively apologizing for me, your host companion, Sejin Sarowick. Sejin, I said your name wrong.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. No, I'm preemptively apologizing for you that you didn't want to just do it yourself. I see. I know we have to talk about we have to talk about Gal Guardians, which is
Yes.
something that we keep, and I am adamant that I do not want it to go past this. For 3 weeks now, we have said this is going to be the end of us talking about this, but this time I mean it. I am putting a memoriam on this game. I do not care about this game.
Honestly,
But things just keep getting weirder. Things just keep getting weirder.
so after 2 weeks of us kind of being the only guys on the internet talking about this game, or giving this game any sort of, amount of our time, the rest of the world seems to have caught up. And
Well, yes, because now copyrights were infringed. Don't you know?
Dun.
We'll take all of the underage nudity we can get in our video games, but the second you step on somebody's copyright toes, the second that there's some legal issue, that's when everybody starts paying attention. Fucking idiots.
It's nuts. And the weird thing, okay, so here's the thing. So Grimguard, which is, first of all, that's also crazy. This whole story is crazy, but we're starting with it, and then we're going into what the episode
Yeah, so do you know what Grimguard... Yeah, do you know what Grimguard is, Dev?
It's a mobile game, right?
Yeah,
and that's
right.
the amount that, as soon as I read mobile game, I'm just like,
It's a moderately successful mobile game,
Okay.
I think is the important thing to say. And now there's something to unpack there. When I say moderately successful, I mean it is bringing in hundreds upon millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars a year. It's just not one of the top ones to be doing that because lo and behold, mobile games are fucking money banks. So it is extremely successful, like if you really want to be honest about it. But in the world of mobile games, it is not one of the big wigs. So that's kind of where this is placed. Just enough money to actually be a threat when they come at you and say, "Hey, don't fucking call yourself Grim Guardians, guys."
So I guess the weird thing to me about it is Grimguard is a single word, and Grim Guardians is 2 words, and also
But that SEO, man.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, it's that search engine optimization. Like they probably it's at some point in the last 2 weeks probably dropped somewhere in some rank and saw that what was happening when people searched those words, because you can literally do that. Like you can look into how often people are searching certain words, and if they're associated with you, how often they're landing on your website and stuff. Google is very happy to provide those kind of analytics. I actually now look at those a lot for the job that I do, and so there's definitely this moment where I'm sure somewhere in one of those reports it hit them that they were getting searched for, or maybe not getting searched for, but because people were putting in Grim Guardians all of a sudden and they were not landing on Grimguard, they got pissed.
Fair, and that makes sense. You would be upset about something like that. I would be upset about something like that. It tracks. I don't mean to do it. I hadn't really considered the search engine optimization of it.
No, and what I think really is the bigger issue is that they didn't care until something like that happened. And I think that's the larger thing that's really kind of annoying about this week for me, and revolving around all of this, is you're right. More people are suddenly talking about this game. You're right. Somebody's finally putting their foot down about some nonsense going on in this game. But all of it has to just simply do with just, hey, you have a name that's close to ours, and then everybody was just like, huh, what is this other game? And then they once they kind of had to reveal their hand. Although I will point out, everybody seems to be thinking that now that they're going to be calling themselves Gal Guardians, that's somehow going to clear the air with all of this shit. That's still not Galgun.
Yeah, it's still not Galgun. It's still going to be rated T for teen when it has mature themes buried deep within the code.
I would call it more content than themes.
I guess that's a good point. I don't.
It's all the same thing.
So the game has been completely delisted from the eShop. I could not find it on the Xbox store this morning. Google searching for it. It does still come up. And interestingly enough, it's more expensive on Nintendo Switch for a digital copy. $24.99 on PlayStation. $32.99.
Hands on it now before we fuck it all up.
Before we change the name. Steam had changed the name the same day that this whole release from Inti Creates came out. So It's just nuts. We're not going to give it any more time than this. It's just after these weeks that we've talked about it, And like I thought I was done with it. I thought I was gonna walk away from the game. And then as soon as they announced it, I was like, I need to get the platinum while it's still called Grim Guardians. So Thursday night, instead of beating Kirby, we ran through the game one more time so that she could get the trophy that was bugged on our first playthrough, and we did the boss rush. Which I do also want to confirm here. For the boss rush trophies, if somehow you landed here for Gal Guardian or Grim Guardian content, thank you. Please stick around.
Why would you
we
be?
do other
We're
things.
apparently the #1 podcast for it, so why not?
If you beat boss rush on the casual setting, that unlocks the unlimited weapon points option. So then it becomes very easy to beat it on legendary because you just use rocket launchers.
Just do the boss rush first. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, do the boss rush on the lowest setting first. It will be easier. The only thing that changes is how many weapon points you have. So then it's a little bit strange that beating it with the highest amount of weapon points, you unlock the ability to have infinite weapon points. But, you know, that's how Indie Creates does boss rushes. Usually it's a code you have to go online to get. So I like that it's an unlockable, and it will unlock on the lowest setting. I guess that's the only new bit of information I want to give. But the Deckers have double platinumed Demon Purge. I fucking hate myself. That's a Grim Guardian double platinum. I hate myself. Let's flush it away. Do you have anything else to say, or are we good to go?
Nah, no, I'm done.
No, I had one other thing. This is me, and I don't want to be a jerk about this. 16 people own the game, the PS4 version. 106 own the game, PlayStation 5 version. So it's niche. I will say that. And that's what we're looking at.
How did you get those numbers?
PSN so PSNprofiles.com is a way for people to track like their trophies and create nifty little cards to show them off. And so anyone who has gotten a trophy in a game is considered a game owner. Like, what's a game you're interested in since I'm here?
I will also point out that that does mean that you have to hit a trophy point, but we've talked about this before, especially with a game like this. I could very much see a number of people purchasing this kind of game and thinking, I don't necessarily want everyone to see the trophies tracked for this game, so I'm going to play it offline or, you know, in VPN or in some fashion that makes sure that doesn't happen. I mean, that doesn't mean that there's a million people doing that, right? So that number is still phenomenally low. I just am curious to know what real kind of numbers we would find out there if we could literally track every person that had just purchased this game.
Yeah.
Just a curiosity. It's not like I feel like somebody should be doing that. In fact, that sounds really creepy, especially in this regard. But if PlayStation does, right, and it'd be really interesting to hear what they would have to say about how quote unquote successful this game might be on console.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to say. For comparison. Oh, this is Red Dead Redemption, the first one. So the game that came out, I think 2010. It came out April 2010.
Yeah, still a pretty big phenomenon. Yeah,
1,020,434 game owners. I was trying to look for Red Dead Redemption 2 because it had that whole interesting thing on Steam this week, where it or maybe it was last week, where it had begun outselling modern games. Now that's because of a sale and everything like that. On PlayStation, PSN profiles. So again, there are the caveats there.
Have they broken that up into online versus main game like they have? Because Rockstar's done that. Didn't they do that with GTA at some point?
Yes,
like
I believe
you can get GTA Online as a separate thing now without having to buy GTA 5. From the beginning,
I think online was broken up. Like it wasn't included when the game first came out, and then they added it. And if you had bought the game, you had access to it, or you could then purchase the online mode. And I think that's why they broke it up and why it was delayed. But just for numbers, because we're looking at numbers with this game, and we'll get to 10 minutes and then no more Grim Gal Guardians or this type of content.
Yeah, I'd be more interested in something like an Infernex or some other smaller indie game. Like what are those games typically, or what is a good counter to it? What's the one that you compare it to all the time?
I compare it to Curse of the Moon. Let's look at the Curse of the Moon.
Yeah,
games.
yeah. So Curse of the Moon, right? Like, what is something like Curse of the Moon pulling?
So the first
on that
Curse of the
particular
Moon.
site?
Let's look at Vita. Let's look at PS4. 13,204.
Okay, so like 13,000 people versus 100 people playing this
Let's
game.
look at Curse of the Moon 2, because that's like a little bit more in line with it. 4,430.
Okay,
And that
number
came
dropped,
out in
but that's
2019. So like that's
Yeah.
like also closer in line. So it's and let's look at Infernax, because Infernax was my game like this of last year. And this is again all off of psnprofiles.com. This is not something that we've done. 783
Okay.
on Infernax. So
See, that seems low to me too, considering the number of people that we've heard talk about. Because you're not the only one that's praised that game.
yeah.
So I'm curious how it's tracking.
Well, I
those
mean, the
numbers
other
and getting
thing
all of
is
those,
that
but
the-
no matter what, I think the comparison still holds. It's just whatever information they're not getting on one, they're not getting on the other, right?
True. And what I would guess on this whole thing, what the heck was it? Vengeful Offender. Vengeful, come back up. Most people buy their indie games on Steam. I don't
Yeah.
think a lot of people play these type of indie games on console, but it's still an interesting thing to examine because of those people who still do. I really want to find Moonrider, because that's a game.
And it does
similar
put
that
it really
came out
into
this
a
year.
larger perspective, because you hear all this talk about like what consoles are being kindest to indie like developers, and it was really kind of a big deal. It still is a big deal for Switch to be able to tout that. But when you're talking about that kind of difference between like a PC like run of the game and that, like, man, as a developer, like, no wonder you're still just focusing on the PC, right?
Yeah. You'd almost be foolish not to.
Yeah.
Because
you gotta really have a good like love and idea for you to be focusing on a console specific game right now.
yeah, that is a very good point. I've lost my monitor, so we're still recording. I can see that bit of it. There we go. We're back. We're doing too much. That's what that says to me. I looked
Gal
up
Guardians is like breaking through.
Vengeful Guardian Moonrider, which is another similar sort of we're a platformer style game that I would compare to it. 82 on PS4 to, I imagine, like around 500 for PS5. No, 227. So, I mean, those numbers seem sort of in line for a game that's been out for almost a month.
Yeah, especially with that one that was not being talked about very much versus some of these other ones that get brought up from time to time.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's just been a thing. And now we'll see what happens that people are talking about it. Because I know that there were people that were like, oh, I got to get my hands on it. If you were able to get a physical copy, that's impressive media. And it's like, well, the game hadn't released physically yet. It was pre-order everywhere. So I don't know. It also kind of feels gross to me, like it might be the marketing. Like, let's
You
do
mean like
this
they
with
did
the
it on
game.
purpose? No, they were just trying to they were trying to mask what their game was. Like I think it's weird because I had not heard of Grimguard before this, so I'm kind of biased in that I'm like, maybe they just didn't know about it either, right? I didn't. So
Yeah.
like there is that element for me, but also like if you're in this world, you should be aware of what your competition is, right? Like literally, like I said, that's part of my gig is actually looking up like what other companies are up to. So like knowing that kind of information beforehand is kind of somebody's job. And so if they didn't know that, that'd be weirder to me. So maybe, I mean, God, that's too much of a rabbit hole already for a game I don't want to look into any further.
So we're going to 15 and that's it. But the search engine and optimization, that's a really interesting part of it. And it's what I wouldn't have considered because Grim Guardians was announced last August. So it's also strange to me that Grimguard wouldn't kick up dust until the game had come out for 2 weeks. So then that adds more credence to that. Because you were searching Grim Guardian. I was searching Grim Guardian as soon as I learned about the game from one of the trade shows. And it was what came up. And Grimguard was nowhere near it.
Yeah.
So, like, have they been being cannibalized for like 10 months? And now...
Or maybe not even
8 months. Sorry,
cannibalized,
yeah.
but maybe it's a matter of, one of the things that happens a lot with games nowadays is that people are not, I don't know how to say this because I don't want to sound like people are just not as into this shit as we are. Let me
True.
put it that way.
That's
So
fair.
when a game comes out that they're curious about, they don't always know exactly where to go looking for it. One place people might look nowadays, and they'd be forgiven for doing this first and foremost, is on your phone, right? So what it might be is that that even you searching when you were searching for it, like you weren't searching through the phone game store to find it, right? You were probably searching through the internet in some fashion. So the page that they could literally be looking at is shit. We have a bunch of people on phone marketplaces trying to find this other game instead of us, or searching us. And I don't know, is this game available in some fashion phones? Like it could even be that it's just a particular type of marketplace. That's why I say it feels really gross that they didn't really care until they figured out it specifically affected them. Like it's just so obvious that legal stuff takes time too. So maybe they've been trying to get something off the ground, and this is just the first shot across the bow they could actually manage. But like, it doesn't feel that way because, as you said, it's been what 9 months at this point for them to figure this shit out, and your legal team better work faster than that if you got to stop somebody from doing this kind of shit.
Yeah, I don't know. So that's it. We're closing the book. I promise we're not going to talk about it again unless I can't make that promise. Because if something insane happens with this game, like it's revealed that the game is not going to be released under the new name, or like Switch decides, no, we're not putting it back up because now we've put it under bigger scrutiny that it links to the Galgun games.
Yeah.
Like, it's these mature rated games and it's rated T for teen. Like, we would have to cover that. But I can definitely say that next episode, I don't want to talk about it at all. I didn't want to talk about it this episode until more and more crazy stuff kept happening with it. Which now brings us to the episode proper. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejin Sarowick. Sejin?
Said I wasn't gonna lose my head, but then pop goes my heart. Yeah, that's right, everybody. Pop goes my heart. We're back to everybody's favorite new segment on the Say Report this season, where Sejohn tries a new soda pop.
Oh, God, I love it.
It's actually, the thing is about this one is it's actually been out for a while, and I'm sure is available to everybody, and I didn't actually want to talk about it because it's from one of the big guys.
Is it Starry? Did you try Starry?
Yeah. Well, so we tried Starry.
I need to time out. I need to Zach Morris time out for the briefest of briefs.
Yeah.
I love, we did not prepare this, but that felt so fucking prepared. Oh, I'm sorry. Time back in. So you tried Starry. I had to put a hat in the hat there. What?
So that was just it, right? So for anybody that's not aware, Pepsi has developed or released a new. I mean, it's basically a Sprite competitor, right? They've always had their lemon lime sodas like Sierra Mist, and they weren't involved in 7-Up. That they were their own thing.
7-Up is one of the oldest sodas.
Fresca, I think, was Pepsi code. No,
Fresca is actually Coca-Cola, I believe. It's in the Coca-Cola section at the Cumberland Farms.
To that point, then, right, is Sierra Mist was always more of a subsidiary, like a challenger, as it were, to Fresca, right? They never quite had like their own like Sprite. And so this is their swing at that is making their own version of Sprite, and they call it Starry. It's a lemon lime soda. Honestly, they got to figure out what the hell's going on with the design on the box, because it looks like it is just an off-brand soda. When it first came out, I thought it was like the Smiths or Kroger brand, like Sprite. So they really got to put their foot down on that one. But we got a couple of boxes of it. So when we drink soda nowadays, most everybody in the house will drink zero versions or like sugar-free versions, because we're getting old like that. But I wanted to make sure that we also got one of the full fat versions as well. So we grabbed a couple of different 6-packs for a Purim party that we were having last week. We figured, at the worst, we'll use them for mixed drinks. But if anybody also doesn't want alcohol, then we can say we've got this. But obviously, I was going to try it before we just before we Fausted it on somebody. I was like, I'm gonna try it. It's real gross, Dev.
So here is the really interesting thing about it. Exactly 1 month ago, exactly a month ago. And I know it was a month ago because I hung out with a person who's going to factor in a little bit later in this episode. He said I should call him Clyde on the show. I hung out with Clyde exactly a month ago, and we oh no, was it 2 months ago? I hung out with Clyde. That's the most important thing about it. And I stopped at a Walgreens. Yeah, it was in January. I stopped at a Walgreens and I saw Starry, and I was in a strange area. I was not in like home base land. I was in a strange land. So I thought that it might be like a local soda.
Like a local, a local thing, like an indie project, as it were, right?
So I was excited to try it, and then I was looking at it, and I noticed the Pepsi logo, and then I Googled it, and it is specifically the replacement for Sierra Mist. Yeah. So that's the really crazy thing. So Pepsi thought of Sierra Mist as a lemon lime soda, even though there was definitely something else going on in the Sierra Mist.
Well, so the big thing in Fresca is it's technically a grapefruit soda, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what it was in Sierra Mist, is it was a citrus soda. So lemon and lime for sure, but also things like grapefruit or, even orange or
pineapple.
A
little bit of orange in there is what I would always say.
Yeah, there could be a whole bunch of different... It was a citrus soda is what it was.
So that's the thing. So then they're pivoting to Starry as this lemon lime soda, but then the website, and I wanted to bring it up, but I'm just like, I can't dive into this until the time is right. And the time is right when you have also dove in. Now is the time. The daylight savings time is now. Where the website talks about how it's a soda for Generation Z by Generation Z. So they don't want it to be too complicated. They want the logo to be like friendly and kind of plain, because they're trying to sell it as the Generation Z soda.
See, that doesn't work on so
crazy
many levels.
To me. Well, first of all, I don't think Gen Z drinks soda, right?
Well, right. But on the highest level, the number one thing that we have learned about Gen Z time and time again is they fucking hate being pandered to their credit. Like, hell yeah. Like the second that you point something at them and say, I made this for you, they're just like, give us a second, right? And it's not that stuff like that can't catch on with Gen Z, but you better be able to back your shit up. So when you say that, it sounds like a bunch of bullshit, which is, it very often is. What are they doing in regards to Generation Z? Because if you want to talk about from a design aspect, they're failing in that regard. It is not a simple nonsense, like no nonsense design. Like it's goofy and cheap, and like there's a difference. Like do they mean minimal? Do they mean, because it's not that, like what exactly do they mean by simple design? Because
they're trying to appeal to TikTok is the other thing. Like the product landing page was just like, I was excited to talk about this, and now I'm not anymore. Like, I'm going to bury my shame about having bought a bottle of Starry and never talk about it again. On my deathbed, my final word will be Starry. As I drop the snow globe.
Because by that point, Pepsi will have dropped this one and moved on to the next one. I promise you. This is not going to be the one that sticks around. Because, well, maybe it will. Because brass tacks, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just the soda itself. Let's remove everything from the marketing and all of that bullshit. Drinking the actual soda. It has the same problem that all Pepsi products have always had with me. And the reason why, whenever somebody says Pepsi or Coke, the answer is always Coke. It is like drinking straight syrup that somebody has maybe put a little carbonation into if you got to it in time.
It's viscous. It's very viscous.
Yeah, you feel like you're just like putting your mouth on one of those like bags of syrup from like the McDonald's thing, right? Like you're just like sucking on that. And I mean, this is a problem I have with all Pepsi sodas in general. So I think it is just kind of the ways that they formalize their shit. And in that regard, if people are more Pepsi brand fans than Coke brand fans or any other brand fans, maybe they're going to get down on this and maybe it will be the thing that sticks around. But like, if I am put in a room and asked to drink either Sprite or Starry, it's gonna be Sprite every time. Like that was my kind of consensus when I after the 6-pack of the regular shit that we had and the couple of 6-packs of the Zero, because even the Zero still had that like weird texture to it.
Yeah. I mean, it's strange because when Pepsi started, their whole ideal was we're going to appeal to the younger generation, Generation Pepsi, by giving them a sweeter soda. That was their whole market, is that Coke's got like a little bit of bitterness to it. Let's give them a sweeter soda.
Yeah, well, Coke is definitely crisper, I think,
Yeah.
is like a fair way to describe it, right? Well, and that's interesting if you think about it from then blowing it back out to the marketing stuff, like looking at the ways in which Coke marketing always depends on Norman Rockwell, oldie-timey, Santa coming down from the mountains, polar bear, like all of these kind of marketing campaigns that have been around forever. When I think about Pepsi, I think about that one time Britney Spears did it, but I also think about the time that Miley Cyrus did that like, you know, Beyonce did. Like you get these
Michael
like
Jackson
heat
set
of the
his
moment.
hair on fire.
Yeah, you get these like heat of the moment fire things, but then they move on. Well, sorry, Michael, that's not what I meant. But like moving on to like whatever the next big thing is, right? And so Pepsi is constantly trying to stay on top of that shit. It's why they sponsored like the halftime show for a while and stuff. So like I never really thought about that, but it's one of those things like now that you've pointed out, like obviously that's how their attitude is. They've always been the Sonic to Coke's Mario, right?
Yeah. Well, even color-wise, right? Red to blue.
Well,
Red oni,
but
blue
also,
oni.
they're the rad bad dudes that are in the room with too much sugar in their soda, huh?
And
Who
that's why
needs
they were
teeth?
doing things like crazy flavors in soda. And then Coke was like, well, we can do vanilla Coke if you want vanilla
Yeah.
Pepsi. You want berry Pepsi? Think about
Well-
like the clear crystal Pepsi, where like, oh,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
clear.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
they're
well, and notably, Coke, what they do with their flavors is they lean into the old soda shop concept, right? Like vanilla Coke is something that people have been buying from soda jerks for like 100 years, right? So like, yeah, that's the flavor that they lean into, right?
yeah, ditto cherry Coke, right? Because cherry Coke was
Yeah.
another thing. Soda jerks adding cherry syrup to things, and now like it's also weird because they have like the Move series where they've had like Dreamland or
Well, I think
the
it's
gravity
Coke
thing.
trying to. It's not that Coke has never tried to appeal to
Right.
younger generations, right? Because I think you're not wrong. I think one of the the next big things to consider is that none of us are drinking soda like we used to. It's Gen Z, yes, but like I think in general, people are just not drinking soda like we used to for a number of reasons.
We learned
not
that
least
high
of which
fructose
are-
corn syrup is
I
poison.
can't take it, right? Yeah. So I do think also like it's not that Coke has never tried to appeal to a younger audience, but it's never where they've put all of their eggs. It's not the basket that they've put all their eggs in, right? Whereas like Pepsi has whole hog always tried to be that one on the cutting edge with whatever like young kids want.
The taste
But
of a
like
new
I said,
generation.
we know that doesn't work anymore. You know, in the 90s, we loved that shit. We were like, yes, pander directly to me, make everything for me and me alone. Said the 10-year-old white me at the time. Right? But that's exactly what they were doing in that regard. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
let's
is.
sit here and act like Coke is not trying to appeal to.
I know. I just want to be seen like they're doing it too, but they're doing it in like limited edition stuff. They learned the lesson of Coke 2 because Coke 2,
Yeah.
just like search engine optimization for Grimguard, when they saw people were buying Pepsi, they're like, I guess we can make Coke sweeter. And people hated it,
Yeah, people were like, this is not why I come to Coke.
but it ended up being a limited thing. And like there are those people who now clamor for that limited time, and so they learned a bad lesson from Coke 2.
I feel like Moxie's in the corner just like kicking rocks, just pissed and mumbling to themselves like, we were like putting extra sweets in our shit and nobody seemed to like us. It's like it's not the same,
Moxie, you're putting sugar in motor oil, and you're expecting like people are gonna love this shit. No, it's motor oil still.
Yeah.
God, and it's used motor oil. It's not clean synthetic. I'm doing an oil change with this.
Oh, this is the gross shit. This is the stuff that comes out after driving 1,000 miles on a.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we're adding carbonation and sugar to it. Moxie, you want to
wonder
die
why-
if you're drinking
You ever
this.
wonder why the number one soda sold at Valvoline's everywhere is Moxie?
Oh God, I don't even know. I had a friend in high school who loved it.
Oh,
And it was like, I don't know how you can. I'll drink it, but like, there has to be nothing else there. Pepsi can't be there.
Now that we live in an era of this like indie pop scene, right? Like I love that I can say that exact phrase and mean what I said. But like, this is something that has really blown up over the last like 20 years as people have started to care more about where their food comes from and wanting to buy like boutique shit and like this. Especially because soda is a treat for a lot of people, so they're willing to spend $3 on a Jones soda rather than $1 on a Coke because like, yeah, it's a little more expensive, but this is not something I buy all the time, right? So with that whole attitude, right, and Moxie really is in like this really weird position to really kind of lean into the fact that what they really are is they're like making like it's like somebody tasted a Coke and then went home and tried to recreate it themselves, and this was the first batch. Like, and they're getting there. They definitely know what ingredients are there. They just maybe don't have the weights right, and there's maybe a couple of things that they're putting too much in. But like when the number one like flavor I'm getting when I drink your cola is mostly cinnamon, you need to rethink some shit.
You know what I also like to think about with Moxie is that it's like a mother dough, that original batch. Like a little bit is added to every batch of Moxie. And it's
Moxie
overpowering
like
everything else.
200 years old. Yeah, that's just...
Oh, wow. This pop goes my heart. I will talk about the soda that I tried yesterday. That was really exciting. So like we have Yacht Club soda in Rhode Island. Like it's the Rhode Island official soda. It says it on all the caps.
You can get it at Iggy's. That's where their root beer is available. I'm pretty sure that's the root beer.
That is they're definitely tied up with Iggy's. But I went to a little coffee shop yesterday for breakfast, hanging out with Clyde, and in the cooler was like an iridescent blue soda. And I'm like, well, I need one of those. I need to have one of those.
It's a real life Nuka-Cola. I need to drink that.
So I ordered a nitro cold brew. I got a cafecito, which was a lovely Cuban espresso that freaking got me going. It kept me going over there. And then I'm like, and I'll also have one of those blue sodas. And the guy was like, good choice. Good choice.
Okay, let me guess. Was it cotton candy flavored?
It was blue raspberry flavored.
Oh,
I was so happy that, like, I was afraid that it was going to be like
bubblegum,
a cotton candy.
Yeah.
Bubblegum I'd love. Bubblegum is one of my favorite flavors. Bubblegum ice cream. I was so upset on Friday. Friday it was like a little bit warmer than usual for the season, so all the ice cream shops were open, but because they were like open more out of reaction than them being prepared for it, everyone I stopped at to try to get a cone of bubblegum ice cream was cash only. And I'm like, well, I don't have cash on me. This was a surprise treat.
Nobody carries dirty COVID cash. Come on.
So yeah, if it were bubblegum, I would have been happy. If it had been like a cotton candy, I was expecting like a berry lemonade, probably because of the Jones berry lemonade soda. But when it was like just straight blue raspberry, and not that like cloying, destroy your taste buds blue raspberry that you find in most candies.
The tannins of the blue raspberry, they like burn your tongue. I'm so delicate.
It's why there's no blue raspberry Skittle. You're never truly tasting the rainbow. But if there was a blue raspberry in with the other 5 flavors, that's all you would taste.
Yeah,
it's a shame. You want blue raspberry? I think the wild berry pack has it. That's my favorite pack of Skittles. I don't know what we're talking about here, but I tried that. It was such a like pure blue raspberry flavor, and it was very refreshing. I'm really glad that I tried a new soda, and then that we did "Pop Goes My Heart" to start this. Well, to start this episode proper. If I want to be an asshole. Also, it is daylight savings time, and that's nothing new for a recording of the Say Report. We record on Sundays, and daylight savings always happens on Sundays. And I really liked about the whole daylight savings of it all, when I reminded you that it was daylight savings, you're like, I know, everything does it on its own. But now Clyde gets his moment in the sun. We were talking about it yesterday because we had breakfast together, and he's like, yeah, that's so like Monday how we lose that hour. And I'm like, no, we lose it tonight. Like, please don't screw your life up by thinking you have another day. I'm sorry.
No, bigger point. You're glossing over my bigger point when you were reminding me was that you were also reminding me on the fall back because on the spring forward, I mean, and not on the fall back because yeah, what's the fall back mean? I show up an hour early and you just go, we still have an hour, dum dum. But this is the one where you would show up before me and be like, hey, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
So because it affected you, this was the time you reminded me.
Yes. Also, you did. We recorded our Adam Sandler Cinematic Universe episode this past Wednesday. It was on anger management. I did not manage my anger. So if you want the angriest Devon that you've probably ever heard recorded, you should go check that episode out. And he ends the recording with, so is there anything else for me? And my response is, oh yeah, daylight savings is on Sunday. So like, just heads up. And I mean, you didn't manage your anger there. You're like, everybody keeps telling me, I know what happens. And it was fun. It was fun for me. And then I'm like, oh, I'm gonna bring this up, right? It's a good way to promote our other show, and it was a funny moment for me. And then I was talking with Clyde yesterday, and his whole thing of like, oh yeah, Monday, huh? And like, he has a kid, right? And he doesn't consider that. That kid's gonna lose an hour of sleep.
Man, just like, I hope you're making like a compliment Oreo out of this. Like you talk really nice about him at first, and now you're shitting all over him. Now you got to say something nice again.
He tried Link to the Past randomizer yesterday for the first time because we ended up hanging out after breakfast, and he did a pretty good job until he got to Trinex. At which point, I was ready to ram my head right through his TV. But he was good. Like, he took to it really well, and it was kind of fun coaching somebody through it. He's a good guy. I like that guy, Clyde. So, no, he had a good time, and he's the one who found the coffee shop. So, regardless of any judgment that I have for him, you know what I had for breakfast at that coffee shop, Sejin? Do you want to take a guess? Take a guess out of the entire pantheon of breakfast foods. What I had for breakfast yesterday at a coffee shop.
a little bit of a breakfast food mixed with a little bit of New England. So like, I don't know, like a Caserla croissant or something.
No, I wasn't in Fall River, but nice guess.
Oh,
I'm like,
okay.
God, a Caserla croissant sounds really good.
Portuguese community.
No, it seems like a thing that they would definitely sell. That's not. Well,
I mean, look, I got family members that would make that for me this moment, and I love them for it.
I'm Caserla canceled, aren't I? No, they did chicken and waffles at this coffee shop.
Oh, awesome.
And then you know what else they did? They did a churro batter waffle covered in bananas and caramel.
That's fucking rad.
And then you know what else I had? I'm just like, here's my new philosophy. And I'm sharing it with everybody, right? Post-pandemic,
I've become Kirby. Sorry, what?
If I go to a restaurant, right? What the pandemic really revealed to me is the impermanence of fucking everything, right? Anything is basically one bad day away from closing in terms of restaurants or anything like that. So if I go to a restaurant and I see multiple things that catch my eye, I'm going to order all of them. My restaurant visits have gone from maybe once or twice a week to once a month. So budget wise, I can usually pull it off. If that
really
makes
worried
sense.
You're going to walk into an all-you-can-eat buffet someday and we'll never see you again. Where's Devon? Well, he's still trying to get everything he can out of that restaurant.
Well, if Scott Adams weren't an asshole, I'd reference that's what happened to Dilbert's dad. He was trying to eat all that he could.
I'm going to keep resting easy on the fact. I'm going to keep resting easy on the fact on that regard that Scott Adams hated that show. So
that's fair. That's fair. But no. So when I see chicken and waffles with a savory waffle batter, I'm going to try that. But then I'm also going to try the churro and banana pancake. And then they did a sausage gravy poutine. That was incredible. That was one of the most incredible things I've ever put into my body.
I don't think I could eat all of these at once. My stomach would jump out of me, put its hands around my neck, and choke me like Homer choking Bart.
Well, let me tell you, next time you're on this side of the country, we're going here. I'm just going to make it happen. I'm very excited. It was a good time. It was a very good time.
Nice.
And we talked about daylight savings, and I said I specifically stopped the conversation. Clyde is somebody who listens, so hi Clyde. Say hi to Clyde, Sejin. You'll blow his mind.
Hi, Clyde. I'm real happy that we've got you here on the show with us now, apparently.
No, no, no. And I paused the conversation when he did not know about daylight savings, and I'm like, I'm bringing this up with Sejong tomorrow. I just need you to know that because I wanted his consent before telling this story.
Good. I'm glad we had at least that. Jesus.
I mean,
Devin,
he
I'm
gave me
jealous of all
the
the time
fake
you've been
name
spending
to
with Clyde. I need
use.
to tell you this.
Yeah, but you're not going to call me by my actual name. You will call me Clyde, and you will
I
call
love
my
it.
baby Blinky, and
Okay,
my
Clyde
wife
and Blinky.
Pinky, and the dog Inky, because I am a Pac-Man. Oh my god, I'm having fun. You know what the other thing is? Because it was
We haven't
daylight
had fun on the show
savings,
in a long time.
um I had a milkshake right during the episode. I've been drinking a Shamrock shake.
Uh-huh.
So like
Oh, sorry that you made me jealous.
it's
Sorry, that was
okay.
a jealous sound.
Here's a Devin Decker tip, right? In addition to, if you go to a restaurant, treat it like it's the last time you'll ever go to that restaurant. Get your shakes at McDonald's in the morning. I did it on a whim the day that the Shamrock Shake was first available. I went to a McDonald's at 7 a.m. and was like, huge shot in the dark. Can I get a Shamrock Shake at this hour? And they're like, yeah. And it was the best Shamrock Shake I've ever had. And then I got one 2 days later in the afternoon, one of the worst I've ever had. They put the care in the morning because they're used to making coffee and stuff. That's the mindset of those people. As
I
opposed to
think
the
that there's
after.
definitely a. This is going to be a very broad paintbrush that I'm
Oh,
about to paint
please.
with, but I do think there is something to the idea that especially in the fast food industry, like quick service food industry, I think that you could really point to this being obvious. There is something about the morning crew that they always seem a little bit more dialed in, right? There's definitely those instances where you go to these kinds of places in the morning, you just want your coffee and your fucking McGriddle, and they fuck it up somehow. Those stories exist, but the reason those stories are horrific and sad to us is because otherwise we would expect the morning crew to be the ones on the fucking ball, and there's just something about that. I think it's because of the respect that we all still have for somebody willing to get up at 4 in the morning to go put a fucking an hour of work in, right? That idea that we just anybody that is willing to get up and serve me at this hour before I'm a human being, you deserve all the respect in the world from us. And so that we put them up on a pedestal as morning workers, right? And I think that affects the ways in which we take in the food that we're eating. Because I'll be honest, the McGriddle that I get at 7 a.m. is probably the same McGriddle I would get at 2 a.m. when it's the third shift making them, right? But there's something about that 7 a.m. one that just feels like this person, I don't know, cared about it more, right? The guy at 3 a.m. was probably high on the back making 100 of them for himself anyway.
Yeah. I was gonna eat 100 McGriddles. Now I can only eat 99.
Like I said, there are definitely workers at all levels that care about their
Oh
job.
yeah.
It's just there's something in innately human to say the fact that you're even here putting coffee together for me makes this coffee taste a million times better.
Right. Because I didn't have to make this coffee myself, and
Right,
I need
right.
this coffee to function. But you need to understand, when I get a morning Shamrock Shake, you can see the syrup. And when
Yeah.
you get an afternoon Shamrock Shake, it looks like a vanilla shake that's got some green streaks in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, we can get into some freakonomics shit about in the afternoon you're more likely to get high school kids that are training versus people that
Mm-hmm.
are full timers,
Yeah.
that kind of nonsense to it. There's definitely something though to be said about the idea of be going to one of those places at a not peak time earlier in the day, you're pretty much guaranteed to have the best experience that particular restaurant can offer.
Mm-hmm. And I'm here to say it, but I still, even though I didn't go to, and also I think it's my specific McDonald's that I go to if I'm getting McDonald's before work. They just seem to care that little bit extra more than the one that's local that I would go to before an episode taping.
Hmm.
But this one did it. I am feeling all sorts of jazzed up after having that Shamrock Shake this morning. I also
I
had Taco
mean,
Bell breakfast, and you know what? I've had a very full morning before we
I'm so
recorded
jealous
today.
that you've been able to get all this in. I
Well,
literally rolled out of bed, grabbed a coffee, and then got on the computer. Is what I did on this end. It's snowing once again out here
oh
in
God,
freaking
I'm
Utah.
sorry. It's Groundhog Day again in
Also,
Utah.
life plans are completely upended. There was I just want to give a quick shout out to Bruce Springsteen and say I hope y'all are feeling better because I don't know if you heard, Dev,
Oh,
he had
I
to cancel
saw,
a
and
bunch
I.
of shows this week. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, man. So I had some family that was supposed to be going to see Bruce this week that didn't quite work out, and that's led to a whole different change of plans in life, and it's wild.
So being so close to that, they get the money back, right? Like it's not one of those things
Well,
where
the first thing they always offer in these cases is they always offer, whenever we reschedule, your ticket is still good, and we're still in that phase.
okay.
Yes, there is definitely a moment at which you have the right to ask for your money back. I have no idea how it changes from venue to venue, from artist to artist. That shit is so tied up in so much inane bullshit. Add to that all of the fucking nonsense with things like Ticketmaster and reseller services and all of that. It is a web of bullshit. If you bought a ticket directly from the venue for this one specific event, I'm sure that venue wants to do nothing but make sure that you are a happy customer. And contact that venue and let them know what your situation is and say, like, look, I know you're offering to take this ticket later, but I'm not going to be able to do that. Like, what else can you offer me? And most of the time, I would say that if they're smart, on the table is definitely a full refund. More than likely, they'll point you to their resale options. A lot of places will let you basically give them the ticket back, and then they'll try and sell it, and then whatever they get for the ticket, you'll get the majority of it. They'll take some fee off the top on that. And the beauty of something like that with, say, a Bruce Springsteen is that if it's a resale on a ticket for a later date, you could have paid $300, say, for that ticket, and they could maybe resell it for 5 or 6. So yeah, they may take a 20% fee off the top, but when they're taking 20% off of $500, you're still getting $400 back on a $300 ticket you paid for.
Yeah.
So you could even make money in that regard. Like there's ways around this kind of stuff, but that is the most ideal situation. That is you purchase the ticket directly from the venue. And the thing is like, that's just not how it works anymore, especially for a guy at Springsteen's level, right? There's definitely somebody involved, like say Ticketmaster, which is a big kick in the nuts because wasn't Springsteen one of the first ones to come out against Ticketmaster, and now suddenly he's like under their umbrella, like ended up kind of folded into them through like iHeartRadio and all that shit. Like yeah, so so that's when stuff gets really kind of gross, and that's where you're more than likely better off waiting to see what the date is for the what's the word I'm looking for, but
The reschedule date.
Reschedule date. Thank you. Yeah. You're better off looking to wait and see what the reschedule date is, and then deciding from there what to do. But the problem is, at that point, it could be too late for you to get any significant cash back on your ticket, right? Because Ticketmaster is like, well, you didn't come to us when we first announced there was a problem, and now we're only giving 50% back at this point. It's like, fuck off. Like, because like you announced a date on like a Tuesday afternoon that like I can't be here in Columbus, Ohio for. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was traveling for the show.
Right.
That's the other thing with someone like Bruce Springsteen. Like I'm reminded of, I have 2 stories well, 3, and I'm going to tell all 3. What the fuck, right? It's all related. It's all part of
It's
it.
our show. We can do what we want.
Do what we want. Like Bruce Springsteen, if he's like canceling shows, what is there a chance he's not going to tour again? Like what happened when I had Huey Lewis and the News tickets, and
right.
like 2 days before it, he announced I can't tour anymore because I'm going deaf, and it's like, that's cool, and like he was only one of the things, so I was unable to get my money back because they're like, all right, you bought tickets for Jimmy Buffett, Huey Lewis and the News, and some third thing. You're still getting 2 of those, and I'm like, yeah, but I bought tickets to see Huey Lewis. I didn't like those were going to be when I go get drinks or something.
Again, it's one of those things where I guarantee you that if it was just between you and the venue, they would want nothing more to make sure that you were a happy customer. The problem is that there's so many third parties involved in that line nowadays that don't give a shit who's happy. The artist, nobody. All they want to make sure is that they get to keep their money, and that's where that kind of shit comes from.
Right.
And that sucks. Like having a third party involved that is not like a I have no skin in this game third party, so I can be as just as possible. Legitimately, they're like, hey, in capitalism, as a third party, I get to have no skin in this game, and that means I don't have to care what happens to anybody in the end result.
Yeah. So that was just it. The other one that I think of, and this is related to the pandemic, which we're coming up on 3-year anniversary of like the day that really hit for us, this coming Tuesday, because 3/14 was the last day we saw movies in theaters. And then everything kind of shut down on the next day. Is like I had bought Dale Fortune Feimster tickets, like front row tickets. They weren't cheap, but they weren't like completely unreasonable. And so that was canceled because of the pandemic. But then the pandemic was not over when they rescheduled it. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really feel comfortable still. Like, Boston is not, it's like yellow. It's not red, but it's still yellow. It's not green like some of the other places with this whole inane thing. Like, it was in 2021. Like, it was in October of 2021.
The system that is built on a pile of bullshit to begin with is even telling us, hey, maybe don't do this. And so, like...
Yeah. So I'm just like, I don't really want to do it. Like, all right, well, you could try reselling them. But nobody wanted to buy tickets. I discounted them. They were front row center tickets. Like, I was there as soon as possible because they really wanted to see her. But, like... So Bruce Springsteen, you think about Bruce Springsteen, but also like a comedian. And Fortune Feimster's a name that people know, but like I wouldn't put her in the same echelon as Bruce Springsteen. But like either or, like the way that Ticketmaster approaches it is going to not be that great. Like I don't even know. And then the last one, and this is a very specialized moment, but it's the other thing that I thought of, is I had won through a radio station the chance to hang out with Weezer before they played a show in Boston. And then of the 4 winners, one of them was going to get to watch the concert from on stage. So the Sunday, right, that bus accident that happened in New York, that whole thing happens, and I'm like, okay, so Weezer's not playing the show that's happening later this week, right? Like I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm not going to be upset about that. But I get the call from the promotions department at the radio station, and they're like, so did you hear about what happened? And I'm like, yeah, the bus crash. I understand that the concert's not going to happen. And they're like, okay, here's the awkward part, Devin. And here's the awkward part, Sejin. We had already decided the person who was going to be on stage with Weezer, and it was you. So I'm like, oh, cool. And they're like, but the problem is that, like, we're supposed to legally, based on everything that we've signed and you've signed, we can replace it with a comparable prize, but only a comparable prize. Like, you won what you won. So, like, you're still in our records, but you're not going to... Weezer has to do a show in Boston where they have the lounge experience behind the scenes and then are letting someone be on stage. That's the only way that you will ever get this prize back.
Yeah, how do you put a financial number on that then means that you can give you a comparable gift, right?
Yeah. So they're like, so like maybe, and I'm like, okay, thank you for like kind of the worst conversation I've ever had with a person. And then, luckily, through my own means, when they were coming to, I think it was the Wilbur, and this was a way better experience, I will say that. Because I've been front row for Weezer. I've talked to them and all that. Like, and I'm not even that, like, big a Weezer fan. Like, I really enjoy their music, but I'm not one of those, like, people... like some of the people that you see out there. And I'm not certainly not somebody...
To be honest, sitting in a back room with Weezer for 20 minutes before a show kind of sounds like a hell I don't want to be a part of.
Yeah, right? Like I mean, I imagine that Rivers Cuomo was just like nothing but nerves before he goes out there and then kind of just switches off his id and ego and just lets his super ego be in control. I don't even know. I might have miscalculated that. He's great when he's on stage. But whenever I've like seen him off of stage, it's like, I'm glad that you enjoy performing, but I'm sorry that you have to deal with all the other things that come from that, sir. But they were doing a show where they were going to play Pinkerton from start to finish, which was huge, right? Like it was like one of these things, and we found out about it last minute, and like, that's a show I wanted to be at. That is a show where I'm like, I really would like to be at this show. Because there are songs off of Pinkerton that Rivers Cuomo has said, I'm never going to perform them live again. So, like, he kind of said, for the anniversary of the album, I'm going to perform the show from tip to tail, the album from tip to tail. on that. That seemed incredible to me. I go onto the Wilbur website. There are 2 tickets available. They are front row center. It comes to $100 after all fees and everything like that for the
And
2
you made that
tickets.
radio station buying both, didn't you?
No, I just bought them myself and had this amazing experience that was made a little bit more amazing because for that show, they had sold like $500 VIP packages, like let's say like 20 of those.
Yeah,
And the
yeah.
guy sitting behind me had bought that. So he had like the lanyard and all this. Like he was all blinged out with this stuff. And he's like, hey, who are you? Like, where's your stuff? I'm like, I bought my tickets this morning. Like, and he's like, you should switch seats with me. I'm clearly a bigger fan than you. And I'm like,
Ouch.
no, that's not how that works. This seat was available and I bought it this morning. And then the security guard came over. This is Schadenfreude at its finest. And I just need to admit that. The security guard came over and asked what the problem was. Because the guy was getting like angry and huffy. And I'm like, he's just upset that I got this seat. And he's like, oh, and he's like, and the guy like told off the security guard. He escorted the dude out of the concert and he did not get to see the show. And I'm just like, well, I guess this is why you don't fight with the security guard.
Oh man!
And like,
yeah, never fuck with concert security. If you were out there in the world, if they say anything to you, you listen to them at all points.
You just, yes, sir. Yeah.
I am not a fan of like people in authority positions that maybe like they're a little too big for their britches. But fuck me, if there's one place where you want to just listen to the guy in charge, it is concert security.
That guy got pulled out. And then I'm like, that was crazy. And then that show, in like, not only did they do Pinkerton, they did a bunch of like, there was it was kind of like going to see a theatrical performance where Act 1 was just kind of a celebration of their entire thing. And then Act 2 was all of Pinkerton in its entirety. Super cool thing. And then between the acts, like, they were just there talking to me because I'm in the front row. It was a super cool, intimate experience. And like, so I feel like karmically I was paid back for that moment that I should have had. That just seems like this would have been weird anyway.
Yeah.
Like
yeah,
I would have had to wear a
I
Snuggie. Like that was one of the things I had signed, so that you have to have a Snuggie on the whole time.
It's such a crapshoot doing those kinds of meet and greet things
Yeah.
too with people because like no fault of their own. Like every person is different, right? And so some artists like before a show goes out there, you learn this when you work in theater, but I've also worked at a music venue for the last couple of years too. In fact, going to be again this summer. We're going to talk about our recording schedule, by the way.
Oh, okay.
But there's always those options, right? Like there's always like that high level meet and greet, especially when you're working at a venue like the one that I work at, where there's a board and they like to take advantage of the fact that like, hey, I'm on the board for this venue, so I get to go and meet the stars type shit. And some artists totally cool with that. They're they don't even look like they're doing anything because they're about to get on stage and just do that thing that they've done a million times, blah blah blah. And then there are some artists that are like, no, I have a ritual. Like for an hour before the show starts, I need to like play 20 minutes of a video game, take a 10-minute shower, make sure I drink this tea with honey in it. Like I have a set thing that I need to be doing. And meeting other humans is not part of that, right? The problem is that some places kind of like push you into it. Like I one of the things that kind of gets wrapped up in the whole Ticketmaster conversation that I think kind of gets lost on people like us that aren't always in that world is that there's a lot of things that the artists in those kinds of contracts and deals are not necessarily fans of. Just because a rider gets put out that says, hey, only brown M&Ms, right? Like that kind of shit. First of all, that may not even be coming from the artist directly. That may be coming from somebody in their system, like trying to like just make sure that you're paying fucking attention. It may even be like because of one incident that they had that they now have to say this with every place they ever go to. That doesn't mean that they like being the bad guy and demanding those kinds of things, right? And this is just the writer that I'm talking about. When it comes to things like meet and greets and stuff, they're just like, I didn't agree to this, but my manager basically, in order for us to get like the fee that we need in order to have enough gas money to make it to the next city, part of the deal was that I have to do this. Like, so if you ever find yourself in those situations, keep in mind that you don't know what you're walking into. Totally be like excited and happy to see them. But if you get this feeling like maybe this artist is not like totally down with what's happening right now, just do your best you can to be that good fan, and then give them the space that they need. If they seem like they are totally down to like talk about your like your life in the neighborhood, and like, hey, like, one of the cool things about the venue that I work at is that it's in this area where the city hall for the city that it's in is literally in the same plaza. The main police station, the main high school, like all of this like shit is right around this huge venue. And we have some artists that come in that they're just like, man, this is just like right in the middle of your town, huh? And they're real happy to talk to people about that. And we get some artists that come in where they're just like, I need my space, and you just got to give it to them. Like, it's such a, like I said, it's such a crapshoot though, because you spend $500 on that VIP experience, you get back there, and then the artist is just like, I don't love this. I became a musician to be on stage by myself. I did not expect to have to be around people.
Yeah. You got to keep the humanity in it. Remember that they're humans. They're not like robots, and they're not there for you. You like it's a very delicate act, and that's why every time that I've ever met or like done anything with a band is usually after the performance. Like one time that I can think of. Yeah. Sorry.
No, just to tie it back to the Bruce Springsteen thing, like with him getting sick this week, right? Is like, at the end of the day, like, you can't get mad about that. Dude's a human being, and who knows what when they say an illness has caused us to have to cancel. I think it was like 5 shows. Like, when that happens, like, you can't be like, no, I paid my money, get on stage, like, play for me, monkey. Like, that's not how it works,
right? And then if he had gotten on stage ill, right, and it's like, well, that's not what I paid for. Like, what? Like, there's no way to like truly please someone in that. So just remember that Bruce Springsteen, in addition to being the boss, is also just a guy.
He's also human, right?
Yeah, like so if he's sick and he's like, I can't perform. Like, also, we're in a post-COVID world, right? Like, it could be that he could have tested positive for COVID.
Yeah, or the other thing is that we have no information that it was Bruce that was sick.
Right.
Somebody on the tour was. And if it was somebody important enough where, like, well, if this person can't do their job, we literally can't do our show, then too bad, right? Like, if it's his bassist, if it's his drummer, if it's his tech guy that is like responsible for all that, like, we don't know who it was that was sick. We don't know what the sickness was. Yeah, if it was COVID, I mean, if it's like one person on the tour tested positive for COVID, and we have this caveat in all of our shit that if one person tests positive, we shut shit down for 2 weeks until we figure out if everybody else is okay. That could just be part of the deal now. Especially at Springsteen's level, he would definitely have that kind of weight to say, like, no, we are going to take this stuff very seriously.
Yeah, and that.
Or you could be like Woody Harrelson and say this is all bullshit.
Oh, licking the dickin'. I'm sorry. All I can think of whenever anyone brings up Woody Harrelson is anger management now.
I don't know why. He's got so many better things to talk about, especially this year as he sits on the precipice of being in a possible Oscar-winning film with Triangle of Sadness.
You know what? I will always judge you by your worst moment. Looking at you, Jeff Bridges, and the scene in Dumb and Dumber. You can do you can be Keanu Reeves' partner in Speed all you want, but you still ruined that toilet in Mary Samsonite's bathroom.
I like that you said Jeff Bridges, because that's not Jeff Bridges, but that's okay.
It's not Jeff Bridges?
You, Jeff Bridges. No.
Oh, it's Jeff Daniels. I'm a fucking idiot.
Jeff Bridges. I thought you were about to pull out like a Giver joke, or like.
I was gonna say you could try to kill Tony Stark all you want, but you still ruined that bathroom. And then I'm like,
that would have been Jeff Bridges, and then not.
I know that's not Jeff Bridges. That's Bo Bridges?
But it's Jeff Daniels in Dumb and Dumber.
Right. No, I understand that I messed up the Jeff Daniels of it all. You could be in your Aaron Sorkin show about newsrooms as much as you want, but you still rude. You know what? This is why other podcasts edit. Because... Yeah. But we didn't edit this. I'm keeping it all in there.
Like, you can't tell the difference between... This is a fun new game Sejong's going to develop. Bridges or Daniels. I like this.
Oh, no. I'm going to look like such a fool.
When the computer wore tennis shoes... No, wait. Was that Kurt Russell?
Well, I thought it was Kirk Cameron. That's in the Disney Channel remake. That movie's weird. The Kirk Cameron remake of the computer wore tennis shoes...
Yeah, I always preferred the other one that Alan Thicke did, the Chip series there.
Almost Human.
Almost Human. I always preferred those as far as like the weird super genius android-esque son.
Yeah, no, the computer
Oh,
wore
that one is
tennis
actually
shoes.
an Android. Yeah.
Yeah, it is an Android. Chip is an Android. Yeah,
Yeah.
Almost Human 2, because there's the lady android that
Right.
Chip
Right. Right.
falls in love with.
Man.
And then I don't remember
Too
the
many
third
people
one
do
name.
decom podcasts already, and there will always be better ones than ours out there. So go find those. But we should delve into some of those old straight to TV decoms that they made back in the day.
Yeah, it can become what's it? We've been struggling with coming up with ideas for time capsule episodes. That is a rich field for harvest.
A rich vein. Yeah.
Speaking of which, we are recording one, just so you can know that some point an episode's going to be coming out. We're going to be watching My Boss's Daughter for our very next time capsule episode. So,
Man.
check that out if you...
Well, so did we talk about Just Married, or did we talk about that on the show at all?
No.
I did a revisit of it a couple of weeks ago, and
With Brittany
the reason
Murphy,
that
right?
Huh? Sorry?
That's the one with Brittany Murphy?
No, I'm sorry. Yes, Just Married is that one, but that's not the one I'm talking about.
You mean What Happens in Vegas?
Yes, What Happens in Vegas. Thank you. With Ashton Kutcher and Cameron Diaz. Man, Ashton Kutcher has done a very good job correcting his public image. There was an era in the Kutcher verse, in the Kutcher career, where he was definitely doing what was very popular at the time. I'm never like Dude, Where's My Car, What Happens in Vegas, Just Married, like all of these were very, very big hits at the time, but they are definitely ones that are of a time, right? He very much was making movies that when you go back and watch, you're I struggle to say the word because I hate the word, but there's no way to talk about it without saying the word. So here it is, everybody. Just like warning on this. But the word retarded is used so fucking much throughout What Happens in Vegas. It is Cameron Diaz specifically throws it out just like I throw out the F word. Like, I'm no saint. I swear like a fucking sailor. And I try to curb it when I'm around certain people and things like that. Like when I taught, that kind of thing. Although I was teaching at the college level, so if one slipped out, I wasn't exactly in immediate danger, right? But that
You were teaching
but there's
first
this idea
graders.
that movie was made at a time where that word was just used. And even and you can say that and you can be like, oh, is that an excuse? No, we knew it was bad then, because it's not even that people weren't saying, hey, stop saying this word. We just weren't listening, right? It was said at its age. So this movie is just like, that's just one example of just the crazy ass shit that happens in that movie. Also, there's all this terrible shit about how how much they hate each other, but they're forced to basically sleep together. Like, I don't know how much of that movie or remember.
Dennis Miller, the thing that sticks with me about that movie of just like, get another judge, because
Yes.
a judge does not have this authority.
Yeah,
They get
yeah.
married in Vegas accidentally, right? They get drunk and married in Vegas. They do not consummate the relationship, which is sort of a big deal in terms of an annulment versus a divorce. So they
Like in the real world or within the world of the movie?
no, in the real world. In the real
I was
world,
gonna say, because in the movie they don't even really address it. In the real world, I do know that that's kind of a big deal, specifically in regards to the religious aspect.
Yeah.
The legal system does not give a shit whether or not two people have fucked and they want to get
well,
divorced. If
good
that's
for
how
the
they wanna
legal
do it.
system, because we shouldn't care about
Right.
that, right?
But there is something definitely to be said about how even now there is definitely this overarching kind of shadow of, well, have you two done it yet? And it's just like, no. Well, then you're not married. Here's the annulment you want.
Specifically in Vegas, and this is true, an annulment can be done quickly if you can prove that you haven't consummated. A divorce will have just like, it's like a 48-hour delay, and it's just based on the fact of like the actual legal things that need to be done. Like in terms of we need to schedule a court date for you, and you actually have to appear in front of a judge. Where like an annulment can just be someone signing a piece of paper and stamping it, saying this marriage never happened. So it's one of those things. So like, first of all, in the world of the movie, I can't believe we're talking about What Happens in Vegas, a movie that I saw like on a whim and was kind of impressed by because I thought it was going to be awful. Like, it is the biggest example of low expectations, high enjoyment.
if you go back today, you'll be like, man, this movie's kind of fucking off.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, there's stuff that I can.
Woody
First of all,
Harrelson also playing a problematic side character because he plays the gay friend, I think.
Who plays his guitar all the time.
Yeah, he's man. I might be inserting him in this movie from Just Friends or whatever. But anyway,
not Just Friends. No Strings Attached or
No Strings Attached. Yeah. Or whatever weird side role Woody Harrelson was playing. I just want to remember
it's
that
No
that's
Strings
the
Attached.
Get us here.
It's Ashton Kutcher and Natalie Portman is the one where he's like, I take a boat to work on the river, and it's like, okay. Thanks, Woody Harrelson.
I take a boat out, literally cruising for dudes.
Yeah. But yeah, so like what happens in Vegas, completely unplanned to talk about this. Like, so they get in front of a judge to get a divorce, even though by like all legal things for Vegas, they could just have it annulled. But also, they don't try to get the divorce in Vegas. They get it once they're back in their regular house, in their regular town. Because, they both wind up there. It's very blended. Like,
but you know, like, okay. So let's lay all the cards on the table.
Oh, my God. I'm not prepared to talk about this movie. So, pardon any memory lapses.
I never want to talk about it again, though. Like,
okay.
I'm not saying I want you to watch it for us to do, like, a deep dive on it.
I don't want to. I don't.
Yeah, because my point is that it is aged, like it's aged like taking a piece of cheese and not just leaving it out to like rot, but like leaving it in the hot sun.
So it's the gross cheese from Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Yeah. But so what happens is that they have a drunken night where they get married. They realize they don't want to stay married. They talk about the idea that it'll be very easy for them to get an annulment. But the problem is that at the last second, Ashton Kutcher's character wins like $3 million in a
right. The money is the issue.
So that's the problem. Is that the reason why they take it back to an official divorce court is because, and this is a super shitty aspect of the story, Cameron Diaz's character is like, well, we were married when this happened, so obviously I get parts of this money. Despite the fact that they had literally just walked away from a conversation where they both agreed they did not want to be together, she suddenly does not want to play ball with him because she wants part of his money. It is the worst fucking hook ever. Right?
That makes me want to throw up in my mouth.
Exactly. And that is like deep seated throughout the rest of that attitude of like that bullshit nonsense is just bubbles up in so many aspects of the movie. I mean, not least of which that at the end they both end up falling in love. Like after all of that, and it's like, fuck that. This person is awful. Clearly, you're both awful.
And Lake Bell punches someone in the dick and goes junk punch, and then credits. Because she's hanging out with Rob Corddry.
Corddry and who plays her friend? Is it Natasha
Lake Bell.
No,
it's Lake Bell.
Oh, you're right. It's Lake Bell. Those two have the better movie.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're gonna do the we hate each other so much that we actually love each other's story that is the rest of this movie is playing on. They also have that plot. That's also crazy. The B plot for this movie is basically the A plot just told better. Yeah, and but that's just it, right? Is like they do such a better job of developing that kind of relationship. I mean, it's what leads to eventually shows like what's the one with Billy Eichner there about like we're the worst, right?
Difficult people.
Yeah, or the one that takes place in Britain where they end up kind of stuck together and because they've got like a kid or something, you're the worst or something, or
You're the Worst doesn't have a kid. The one that you're talking about, is it Breeders?
I don't know. Yeah, but there's a whole
there's another
genre
one like
of this.
that. Yeah.
Right, there's this whole genre of, for some reason, we are stuck together, we don't necessarily like each other, but we need to learn to like each other, and then boom, by the end of it, we love each other. Not a great premise to start with. This movie takes it to the fucking max. But yeah, the whole reason why they don't just do the in Vegas annulment or anything like that is because specifically Cameron Diaz's character does not want that, because then she won't have access to this money.
She wants to go get the divorce in California so that she is legally going to get half of the assets.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the whole thing there. Right. Fuck that. And then Dennis Miller shows up as the judge, because if you want a judge, Dennis Miller, I fucking guess.
But man, you are so caught up on the fact that it's Dennis Miller playing.
Well, because it's Dennis Miller playing the judge, but then it's as if Dennis Miller is the judge.
Hey man, chill out, man. Just smoke a little weed, don't get caught, and make sure that you pay your taxes, and everything will be fine, man.
I don't mean to go on a rant here, but
Yeah, I know. I know this is me. I know this is me. I know, but I need to get this out there.
people today think that they could just get married and divorces like they're picking up dry cleaning. I'm not going to stand for it. I'm
And then, like,
sentencing
two
you to
guys.
30 days of marriage.
And then like two guys want to get married, and it's like, what's that about? That's like cheating the system. I mean, if I could just like live with a guy for the rest of my life, that'd be fucking great. But you can't do that, man. Wait.
This is the worst Dennis Miller impression, like dueling Dennis Millers ever. I'm loving it. But that's the thing. He sentences them to marriage.
Yeah,
And you know what?
exactly.
But they both have lawyers. They're not representing themselves. And the lawyers should be.
Remember, Ashton Kutcher, actually, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, and I might be misremembering this, but I'm pretty sure his lawyer is Rob Corddry.
It's Rob Corddry. Yeah, it's Rob Corddry. You
Who's
go.
like a terrible lawyer.
But still, like, you go, hi, we need to see another judge. We need to appeal this decision.
You know the weirdest character of the movie that also has a bunch of problematic shit, but is honestly not the most problematic thing in the movie? Zach Galifianakis. This is one of his first big kind of roles, where he plays the weird friend who, like, hits on Cameron Diaz all the time. He doesn't show up until, like, an hour into the movie. And
He's
then
not like her
at a
brother?
party.
I could have sworn that he's her brother.
He's a weird friend. He's a weird friend of Rob Corddry and Ashton Kutcher's that just kind of shows up at a party one night. And when he sees Cameron Diaz, he's like, "Is that her? Is she the one?" And they're like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I'll sleep with her so that you can divorce her." And then he like starts hitting on her for the rest of the movie. It's just like, what is this character?
Out Cold was Zach Galifianakis' real first movie.
I love that movie.
Island in the Sun. I can't wait till we get to 2028.
That is, by the way, so that is another dangerous banger. Like I would have put What Happens in Vegas in that category as well, but now that I've gone back, I can no longer say that. I can no longer say that I think it's a great movie that has just got some problems, right? But Out Cold is definitely one of those ones that I've not seen in a long enough time, so I can talk about how much I love that movie. But I also know for a fact that the second I go back and watch it, I'm gonna be like, oh,
you're gonna go. Well, I mean, Zach Galifianakis gets his dick stuck in a hot tub, and that's funny right now. But
that's
like,
not offensive. Like yes, it's offensive, and like, oh, this dude is being weird. But like, he is a weird dude that tries to have sex with a hot tub jet. That is the least offensive thing that you could probably say about that movie.
Right, but you want to talk about the thing where like that's the first memory I have of that movie. There's probably some shit in there. I mean, there's some shit in there regarding.
That can't be the only memory. The brother in that movie is worse than anybody. He's the one that like shits in the drug test, or ends up having sex with that girl in the bubble at the end.
I mean, the Island in the Sun is kind of the most offensive thing about that because it's their song, so it's used as leitmotif anytime the girl comes onto screen.
That soundtrack, man, yeah, Weezer and Lit. There's so much lit on that.
And the thing that I really remember from it, I mean, like, yeah, Galifianakis fucks a hot tub, is the Saturn, because it's the same model SL1 that I had and was driving around with the snowplow on the front of it, and it's like that shit would do nothing in the real world. That car does not have enough power.
That's not the joke. The joke is that every car up there has some type of snow removal thing on it because that's where they live.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, that is kind of true. I have friends that come from Alaska, and you definitely get to a point where you're just like, I'm going to put a snowplow on the front of my bike.
So what happens in Vegas? I mean, even with the worst lawyer, even with Rob Corddry as your lawyer, you could go to the county court office and be like, we need to appeal this decision. Why? Why do you need to appeal the decision? The judge sentenced my client to 30 days of marriage. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. First of all, we're going to disbar that judge. Secondly,
thank you for bringing this to our attention. Wait a minute, that's not a judge. That's just Dennis Miller in a robe. Away!
I mean, we say this shit, but we're also sitting in the midst of, like, some courts in California. This isn't even, like, Florida man coming in, but, like, some courts in California straight up talking about, like, in the middle of, like, banning books. So, like, sentencing, like, a heteronormative marriage to occur to prove a point. We're not too far off from that shit.
I don't know. Banning books is something that there's precedent for. Like, that guy is setting groundbreaking precedent. Like that
I would call in 2023 the banning of books from school libraries a pretty groundbreaking pile of bullshit.
I
would just
wouldn't,
say.
because we've been banning books from schools forever.
We've
Like,
been trying and not succeeding in a lot of places, but now we're starting to succeed. That's the part that's scary.
I guess, yeah, it's but they've still been removed even without, like, people have had to sue to get the books put back in.
Yeah.
So, like, it's just them realizing, oh, if we get a judge to say it, then I don't know. It's a scary.
You have more
time
faith
that
in
we live
humanity than I. I guarantee you we are going to watch somebody get sentenced to somebody out there who, like, maybe they're married, realizes they're gay, and they're just like, I need to end this because this is clearly not the right relationship for me. And some judge out there being like, let's try it for 30 more days and see how you feel.
Right, but
I don't even want to act like that's not a possibility.
But that's why appeals exist.
Yes, by the time you appeal it, guess what? It's probably been more than 30 days because our court systems suck.
Ding, ding, ladies and gentlemen. He's hit the nail on the head. I don't know how I'm going to synopsize this episode. I'm very excited about it. I'm living in real time right now.
You always try and come in with a plan, and I'm not letting it happen.
The title of the episode has already been achieved, so I don't care. I'm just having a blast as you make me talk about. You know what I remember about what happens in Vegas? Cameron Diaz opening so many champagne bottles with fucking swords.
Yeah, I think that only happens once, and everybody's really impressed she can do it because she says she can do it, nobody believes her, and then she finally does it at the party at the end, and it works.
No, she does it in the beginning too. Nobody believes her at the beginning, and she does it.
She does it when they're all drunk, though, I think is the thing, and then they do it when they're sober.
And then they do it when they're sober at the end, and it's just like, first of all, I don't know if I'd be comfortable going to parties with this many swords.
Also, I've seen bodies, and that shit can kill you.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, you risk glass getting into the champagne. I don't know.
It was just for Zach, because he's, I think, the only other person in the world I know that has seen that movie besides me.
That's fine. Dale's the only other person in the world I know is. That's not true. I know other people have played Grim Guardians because this is an interesting thing. I'd like to share it.
There's 14 other people that have played Grim Guardians.
That's a good point. I really enjoy these games that I've been playing lately. I think it's specifically a PS5 feature, and maybe it's something that I can shut off, but I don't want to. I'm enjoying this interesting thing that's been happening where, because I have a trophy, people will contact me asking for guidance on said trophy.
So that's not just a PS5 thing. It is just a Devin Decker thing. Oh, you can comment on trophies or reach out. Like, your trophies can be broadcasted on
right.
PS4.
And I want people to see what I've done. I'm proud of them.
People can definitely get your information from that and add you as a friend, contact you, or even comment on your trophy.
Yeah.
And if you make your shit public, that's the world. But I personally just have it set to just friends. I think by default on the PS4, it's mostly just friends. Maybe on the PS5, maybe that's where the difference is maybe the default on that is public.
Yeah. It's something like, on one level, I kind of want to change it, but on this other level, like during River City Girls 2, when I was like going nuts on that, I would get messages a lot on like, how do I do this trophy? I'm missing this. And it was fun to like send out the responses. Like, it felt, especially with a game like that where I had gotten it 2 weeks early by getting the Asian version of the game. So like, I had that knowledge, but then also there's one trophy in whatever you want to fucking call the game, GGDP, where you have to kill an enemy by punching, and one of the girls has an idle animation where she like pretends to box, and it's not guaranteed because each of them have like 3 separate idle animations, so you have to put her in a spot where she will activate the idle animation and it will kill something. And there are like stationary enemies where you can do that, but like, I got so many messages like, how do you make her punch? And I'm like, it's her idle animation. So you like, go to a stationary enemy and do it. Like,
see, this is oh man, I don't want to keep talking about this.
I know, but it's something that I was reminded of in terms of.
I will put the capper on that. I won't hide that shit. Yeah. I won't leave that thread dangling. I think that's really cool mechanic. I like that. That's awesome. I'm done.
Yeah, that's fine. That's good. I like it. Yeah, and and those are what trophies and achievements should be. Is the other thing. Like
Yeah,
the
weird
one
little shit that you wouldn't find on your own, right?
Yeah. And it was like one of those situations where I had just left her there idling while I went to get a drink. And then I come back and she's doing this cool punch thing. And then she killed the thing in front of me. I'm like, oh, wow. And I got a trophy for it. It felt really cool.
Yeah, that's always fun when you do something that you're like, man, that was fucking wild. That would never happen. And then the trophy pops, and you see that like you're one of like 2% of people that have ever gotten it, and you're like, hell yeah.
I was the third person in the world to achieve it on PlayStation 5. That's also something that PSN profiles.
20 means that you.
Yeah, I know. I understand it, and especially because their whole trophy tracking thing tells you the percentage of people who have it. But it's also cool to be able to look at the list and see, I was the third person.
Yeah,
that's
I think
cool.
you kind of mentioned this last week, but the trophy drops that have been going on in the recent updates of Bounty of One, which is still like in beta, right? Like it's still pre-release,
early access.
So which is why they're doing these add-ins of the trophy stuff. I'm so like happy that they're putting that stuff in because of exactly this, and it's been like this huge endorphin rush every time I open Steam and see like a whole bunch of new trophies have popped on my shit for that, because I was playing that game not like religiously, but like it's an easy game to drop in and out of, and I was moving along in it and it felt like I was doing really good, but there wasn't anything to kind of measure it against because there weren't trophies and things like that, which is fine. I don't go looking for that stuff. I've talked about how much I've enjoyed my experience of the game before the trophy stuff, but now that the trophy stuff is there and I'm seeing that a couple of those levels that I was reaching were only reached by like 5% of players and stuff, that's awesome. That just feels really good. Like trophies definitely feed into the game loop, feed into the endorphins. Like there is a place for achievements and trophies in this world. There always has been. There has been some abuse of that system time and time again that I just don't love.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And honestly, Bounty of One and the achievements that they have really feels like they're chasing the dragon of Vampire Survivors.
Probably.
Where that's the whole gameplay loop.
Yeah.
Yes, but like the whole thing is that like you look at the achievement list on Vampire Survivors, which at like last check is 163, and that's sort of your roadmap to the next thing that you can do to like unlock a new weapon or unlock a new character.
Yeah.
So like I wasn't surprised when Bounty of One introduced it. The only reason I was disappointed is I had gotten almost all of the achievements pre the like 1.7 update.
Right. Yeah.
Except for complete 3 matches in a row at Infamy level 15. And you used to be able to do that in dailies. So like if it was a good daily, you could kind of like cheese it or scam it. Now dailies are not susceptible to trophies unlocking, which is a little disappointing to me.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I think that's one of the ones that I just kind of got just because.
No, well, I'm glad, happy for you. I know.
No. I just I'm having a hard time like connecting with that as an issue, but that's only because of literally just the amount of time that I had just been putting into Bounty of One. Like it's just a time thing for me. Eventually, that number just hits. That's the other thing, is that I really, really appreciate these kinds of trophies where I know I'm good enough to get it, but the problem is that I don't know if I have the time, right? And one of those kinds of achievements out there where it's like you're gonna kind of get this as you play, like those feel good. Not as good as the ones you have to strive for sometimes, but like there needs to be a good balance.
There should be a balance, yeah.
And that one is a really good balance for me. For some players, it's something that they might not get and they have to strive for, and it's not hard to get because it's also possible you might just fall into it. Right? It's right on that line of something that you would probably get while you're playing, but if you don't, it's not hard to achieve it if you try, and that's the perfect achievement to me. Like is one that I could get by doing something cool naturally, or if I see it, I could still pull it off. Right, like that needs to be the two sides of the coin for me. If it's something that's impossible to pull off and you're never gonna stumble into it, it's just no fun for me. And there are plenty of games out there where they're like, "This is the balls to the wall achievement. Like you need to just try your fucking hardest." The Steamworld games kind of infamously have a lot of those types of things where like 90% of their trophies will be just cool shit that you'll just kind of stumble into. But then like there'll be 4 or 5 trophies in a game where it's like you really got to know what you're doing and you really got to do this. If you're gonna platinum this game, you got to know what you're doing. And that's not the kind of attitude I don't love that.
Yeah, and that's why things like trophy guides and things come up, because someone figures out the way to do it, and then there are people who want to know. Because when it's one trophy between you and like full achievement or the platinum trophy, like it sucks. Dead Rising 2, the first one, specifically the first one, because Dead Rising 2, off the record, all of the co-op stuff is just upsets me. Because the way that co-op works in that game, it is like one and done, and then you'd have to find somebody else. Like, I once tried to do it with a friend, all the co-op trophies, which is like get gold on all like the 30 challenges, but between every challenge you have to reconnect. And it's just like, if you fail, like, you don't just stay together. Like, because it was such like an afterthought on Capcom's part. It wasn't part of the like initial base game. So like, it's not well implemented. I don't know if the remake is better or anything like that, but there's a reason why I have the platinum for Dead Rising 2, but not for Off the Record. But even going back to Dead Rising 2, there's a trophy for killing 72,000 zombies in one like cycle of the game.
Yeah.
And I thought that's going to be easy. That's not going to be difficult at all. I'm just going to focus on killing zombies, right? And that is just not the case. Doing that before I like read a guide and like maximized my killing of zombies and everything, like I got to 61,000. Yeah. Like spending 3 days doing nothing but killing zombies.
Well, and like you'd be forgiven for thinking that's easy, because like the first game infamously had these like pockets, these time pockets where like time wouldn't move forward. So I think specifically the best example of this is the opening of Dead Rising, when you first get to the mall and you're in that area in the front where there's certain places where as long as you don't walk to like the back, it doesn't trigger the event that makes time start to move forward. So you could sit there and kill zombies, especially if what you did was kill zombies till you die. That's okay. You keep your level in the Dead Rising games. So then you come back in a little bit stronger, and you just keep doing that until you're so fucking strong that you're just wrecking zombies, and you could kill thousands upon thousands before time even started moving forward. And like, it felt like that was part of the experience, that the game is built to allow you to do this, because that's how over the top ridiculous this game gets.
Yeah.
And then for that to not be like something that happens in the later games, it is kind of what turns me off to 2 and 3, is that like I don't, and Off the Record, like I don't love those games as much as I love the first one, because the first one unabashedly was a cartoon. Like, was like, we don't care how crazy over the top you make Frank before you even start playing the game. In fact, let's put in a section where you literally can just like maximize, min-max this shit, OP as crazy, and then like go through the rest of the game as a god if you want to. You know, it's going to take a lot of grinding, and maybe that's not what you want to do, especially because if you just play the game, you'll eventually get super OP anyway. Like, there, but it's there. That possibility is there. Yeah, I loved that in the first one, and was so disappointed when I couldn't kind of capture that magic again in 2.
That's why Off the Record, of the 2s, aside from the co-op like issue that I do have with it, Off the Record is so over the top that like the final boss is like a Mega Man boss. The way that it's built and everything.
Nice.
And like it's super cool how they're like, well, people found like the serious tone we took with 2 to be a problem, so let's put in the character from the first game and just go over the top.
Well, they do the same thing with 3, don't they? Because isn't there a Frank version of 3, like Frank's Big Package or something?
No,
like
that's
that?
actually Dead Rising 4. That's the 4th game. I've never touched that one because it's a Christmas game, which is
but,
like.
But they had the same problem where 3 was so kind of serious. People were kind of like skeeved out by it. So what did they do? Is they turned around and made another Frank game that was just a cartoon.
Yeah, but the seriousness of Dead Rising 3 was so inherent to that game. There's no way you could just drop Frank in and you'd be all right. Because the psychopath mechanic of the first 2 Dead Rising games, there are only 7 psychopaths in the city, and each of them represents one of the 7 deadly sins.
And it's like Chuck.
What?
Not to spoil anything, but isn't one of them Chuck?
No, Chuck is one of them in Off the Record. So there is a psychopath in.
No, in 3, because you find out Chuck's daughter is the girl you've been with the whole time. That's like the whole hook of 3.
Wow, I never finished 3. I did not realize
Yeah,
that.
yeah, you find out that the girl you've been with the entire time. Again, spoilers for 3, but
Yeah,
like you
I
find
wish
out
you'd
that
said that beforehand.
She
I'm
is
kidding.
she is Chuck's daughter. That I did say it before, but you find out that she's Chuck's daughter. That he's been. So in 2, you have this entire storyline bit where you need to keep getting back to your daughter with the Zombrex in order to secure her, right?
Yeah.
And so going off of the canon good ending of that game is that you do end up getting her to the point where she's she's stable. I think by the time you get to 3, everybody's on Zombrex anyway. So there's like this whole element to that, and you find out that she is Chuck's daughter, and he is one of the big bosses of that game.
Well, he's not one of the psychopaths then, because I beat all 7 psychopaths. So he might be like a storyline boss.
Yes,
which
storyline boss.
Yeah, like that's because the psychopaths are technically extra fights that you can do in order to
this
understand.
is wild because the ways the psychopaths were weaved into the story of 1 and 2, honestly, were kind of part of the fun. I mean, the entire clown bit in 1 is like one of my biggest memories of my early Xbox 360 gaming is when you get to the section that has the roller coaster in 1, and it's the clown guy juggling chainsaws, and you have to face him in order to get the thing going again. It's crazy.
There is one I don't think any of the psychopaths are necessary in 2, because like 2 is supposed to be more open world, even though it's an enclosed space. Like that's the whole thing of it. So the cool thing about that game is you find the psychopaths as you explore the game and play it differently. So like if you're not in the casino, well, there's 3 casinos in that game. If you're not in the West Casino before noon on the first day, then you miss a psychopath fight there. Yeah. So it's like, so they're not inherently part of the game, and I actually think you can beat the game without facing any of them, because that seems like the type of thing that Capcom would do, where they like do a psychopath free run until you fight the final boss. But like, yeah, and it locks it out. Like you can't fight every psychopath in every playthrough. It's interesting.
Yeah, those games are so
they're cool, and
ridiculous.
As ridiculous as they are, I give all credit to Dead Rising 2 for making Chuck a motorcycle guy, because that's what Eliza for Resident Evil 2 was originally going to be before she morphed and got changed into Claire Redfield. And like so like that outfit is in the Resident Evil 2 remake, and you can read about Eliza and what her story was going to be. So then we're like, well, this is like the fun Resident Evil. Let's make the dad a motorcycle guy.
Yeah, let's stick with the motor. Yeah, there's a ton of those kinds of references throughout all of those games. Yeah.
So like and that's not something I knew until I got into Resident Evil 2 much later on, and understood that like Chuck is just like a die-staff counterpart to Eliza. And
hey, speaking of Resident Evil,
the chainsaw
were you able to
demo.
get in on that chainsaw? Yeah, you parry the chainsaw, Dev.
So I beat it in 18 minutes. That was dying 3 times to the chainsaw guy, and then the last time that I beat the chainsaw guy, I freaking killed the chainsaw guy. I'm just like, I'm not playing nice anymore. No more Mr. Nice Leon Kennedy. His name is Kennedy. So I blew him up with the
reason has to take Claire's last name because she ain't fucking taking his.
So I threw a flashbang and knocked him down, and then while he was about to get up, I threw a grenade, and then I just stabbed him till I broke my knife and kept shooting, and he went down, and I'm just like, that felt good. Like, very non-Resident Evil is what I'm going to say, because Resident Evil, the way that I play it, like I try to avoid confrontation, but it's like, no,
I mean,
I'm
say
done.
that, but I think of like that opening in the village in 8 where like you get bombarded, right?
Yeah.
And now I've always stood by the fact that where 7 was a really good remake of 1, 2, and 3, 8 was always a really good like kind of an homage to the city aspects of 2 and 3, and specifically the town aspect of 4, right?
Yeah.
So like it's cool that 4 has a lot of stuff to it that reminds me of what was going on in 8, because 8, it's cyclical. 8 had a bunch of stuff in it that was reminding me of 4. I can definitely see in that regard why you'd feel that way, but like Infamously or famously, depending on how you feel about 4, like that's kind of what 4 really brought to the table, right? Was that more that better balance of action and horror that then 5 and 6 completely lost. But then, like I think 8 had a kind of really brought it back. 7 was once again full of horror. There's so much stuff in 7 that is like hurry up and wait type stuff, but
7 really blew me away. Like, I was not expecting to enjoy it with the first person or anything like that. And then, like, the story was really good. And 8, I was kind of on board for until the fucking factory. And then I'm just like, this is stupid. And then that ends with sort of a Mega Man style boss fight to go back to what was off the record.
So the way that 8 is broken up into basically like the 4 kingdoms that you go to, like the way that it's broken up into those types of things, the factory level is definitely kind of out of. See, I think it weaves in really nicely with it's a great
biome. It's a great biome. It just doesn't feel like the rest of the game.
Well, you know what it is it always reminded me of those moments in Resident Evil that you always end up in, where you go from the mansion to the testing facility, or the city to the scientific thing under the city. Like there's always that moment. There's always that moment where the script flips in Resident Evil, where you're resident, right, where you're out in the city or you're out in the mansion or whatever, to suddenly being in this like secure facility, and that just happens across the board in every Resident Evil game, right? And that is what it kind of felt like to me, was that moment in Resident Evil games where it becomes that, where you're suddenly in this. I mean, even 7 kind of has it, where you find like the ship and shit, and there's that entire storyline about like what's going on with all the scientists there.
The ship, I love the ship section though. As weird as it's
done really well, and I think when that flip is done well, it works. Resident Evil 1 will always be like top notch for me, because that moment where you finally are like, you go down into the facility and everything becomes clear about what's been going on. It's still like interwoven into, especially in the remake, where they really tie in a lot of the stuff with like the break rooms and things like that up top on the surface level, and the ways in which they all feed into this nest of shit down underneath. I mean, but that's even to the point where it's in the first Resident Evil movie, right, where there's the mansion up top and then there's the whole facility underneath.
Yeah, with the weird cube thing there's a too long special edition thing on the DVD about how they did that cube scene. Sorry, I had friends who made me watch it, and like that's all I think of when I think of the first Resident Evil movie. Yeah. So it felt so, I don't know. It's like when it came, that's the only part of that game where I was just like, I think I'm ready to be done. And then like the last fight, you're in a freaking mech fighting a mech. Like it's like I'm just like,
hands you like a fucking like tank or something.
I'm just like, come on, like what?
To be fair, the very last fight you end up being just eaten on his feet. But by that point, you figure out like spoilers for Resident Evil 7 and 8. Like you figure out like the storyline of Ethan and that he's not necessarily human. So there is that entire one too where you fight her. But
yeah, I mean it all comes down, and I mean I enjoyed Village, but like. What keeps me from replaying Village the way that I've replayed other ones is that factory section.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. You know what it is? You do the really cool stuff with like the werewolf den immediately before the village section, the factory section. If those two things were flopped, I think that it would be like, it's just that werewolf thing just feels like, holy fuck, I am in the thick of this. And then it's like, let's go to this basically empty factory. Like, it doesn't feel as claustrophobic as the stuff that was before it. Yeah, if that makes sense. Like,
so I'm curious to see how you feel about the full 4 release when it comes out. I don't know what they're going to do to switch it up. They've already put out some cinematics that they've shown that a couple of things are going to change here and there, specifically more in like line delivery than anything else. But if they're willing to make those kinds of changes, I'm curious to see what kind of bigger changes they're willing to make.
So, of course, they do address my biggest issue with Resident Evil 4, which is that it's still tank-style controls. It just gets on my nerves. It doesn't allow me to become immersed, right? So I was happy to see that, like, they did not keep that. I would have been really surprised if they had kept it and just updated the graphics. But again,
they turned their back on tank style controls since the GameCube remake of Resident Evil. So I mean, there's 3 different control schemes in that game.
Yeah.
So like as much as like I get not liking those controls, but they have not been married to tank style controls for 20 years now.
I don't know. Resident Evil 4, when I tried to play it early days of this show, that was the only way to do it. There was no way to move and shoot, which is the big issue for me. I know that it's not going to, whatever. I don't want to, we've had this conversation too many times. So
that's not necessarily what tank style controls means. I didn't realize that's what we were talking about. Tank style controls means that when you press forward, you go forward in the direction you're facing, not necessarily forward in the direction the camera is facing.
Right.
And that's what, right.
So,
and
but
that has been gone from Resident Evil as a required playing since, like I said, the GameCube remake of 1 introduced a new scheme of control.
Yeah, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is the last one that was the only way to move, right?
Right.
Like I think even like Code Veronica,
the run and shoot, like the run and gun style aspect of that has been available since probably 5. Like Resident Evil 5 really kind of started that whole thing, because the whole point of that is you're in kind of like a horde mode every level that doesn't end, so it's not about sitting there and killing every zombie, it's about getting through, which is definitely parts of 4 but not all of 4.
Yeah, so that,
but it becomes all of 5. Like all of 5 is that,
right? So I was happy that like they added the, because that's what got me into Resident Evil 2, the remake of 2, was like, oh, I can actually move, and it feels more like I'm trying to survive this as opposed to playing a game where survival is my goal, if that makes sense. But then when the demo was just the only part of Resident Evil 4 that I've played so many times, I'm like, I wish this was something different, because I was excited for Resident Evil 4 Remake until I played the demo. And then I'm like, am I going to buy it on release day? I don't know if I'm going to buy this on release day.
I think the bigger thing is that for Resident Evil 4 specific fans, we won't talk about Resident Evil writ large because there's people all over the map. But for Resident Evil 4 fans, this was an important part for them to get out there to show the subtle differences they are making, but more importantly, the things they're not changing. I think a lot of people were very worried that things were going to get like completely turned on their heads for this game. And what this has done for a lot of Resident Evil 4 fans is tried to reaffirm. For some people it's succeeded. I haven't really heard anybody disappointed in this demo, but I'm sure they're out there. But for everybody that's praising it, their big praise is this feels like playing Resident Evil 4 again. Not exactly, definitely different, but the feeling that I had, that feeling of discovery, that feeling of excitement, that feeling of I'm in control that I've never really felt before in a Resident Evil game, that feeling has been recaptured. So even though they are changing some things, they're changing it in order to keep up that kind of momentum, as opposed to in spite of that momentum.
That's cool. I will always say that. That's cool. That sounds really cool. I need to give it another shot because it didn't connect with me. And
I mean, it's also important to point out that you played this and you said you got through it in 18 minutes, right? Like, this is supposedly like a 20-hour game. You know, when you get it down tight, probably less than 8 hours. But like, first playthrough of this game will probably be 15 hours for most people, 15 to 20 hours for most people. So we're talking about 20 minutes out of what is going to be your time with this game. So like, also, I love demos and I love all of that, but they put out such a specific moment in that game that is so kind of unlike the majority of that game. I'm very, very curious to see what the rest of that game still looks like. I feel like this didn't really address it, but people are excited. So like, I don't want to, rip into it too much, because like, clearly it's working for people.
I mean, people really, and like, there's little Easter eggs in it of stuff where this was how I dealt with this section of the game before. Like, I'll climb up into the clock tower of the church, and then the floorboards give out in this version. And I'm like, that was super cool. I was not expecting that as somebody who has used that strategy in the past. Because, like, it's a good way to survive until the chainsaw guy comes. And then you have to go down. Like, so I don't know. But it was a little bit discouraging because I'd been excited to see this version of the game, especially after how much fun I had with the remakes of 2 and 3. And then for the demo to be this section, I'm just like, I don't know if I want to get it on release day. But like, I already took the day off and everything, so I'm probably still going to. But it's still the Resident Evil 4 problem for me, where like Resident Evil 4 just doesn't jive with me on a like very distinct level. So I am going to have to overcome that or hurdle to beat it. And they're saying the demo is supposed to take 20 to 30 minutes. So I feel pretty good with like that 18-minute clear time on my first try.
Yeah.
I'll say that. And I don't think I would have been able to get there if I hadn't done what I did with the 2 remakes prior to it. Or even 7 and 8, right? Because I've played both of those as well, off of the strength of those 2 remakes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's
I'm excited for we've talked a lot about Resident Evil over the last few years with everything that's been going on, and 4 has never been like my number 1, but it's definitely up there for me. Like I do adore 4 for a lot of the stuff that goes on in it. I mean, especially because the way that it narratively like pushes Leon's story along. Like I love all of that. I am very curious just to see kind of where the changes are in that regard, because like, you know, the first time it came around, like you had Ashley is the president's daughter there, right?
Yep.
You had to do a lot of managing of her, and they're promising that that's not going to be a big aspect of it. And it's like, man, that's awesome. But then you think like, but also again, narratively, there's a lot tied into those moments of like Leon like telling Ashley what to do, where to go, stay safe, that kind of stuff, or her not listening to you in like the worst moments. Like so to remove that aspect, are you going to lose that part? But then some of the cinematics they put out have reaffirmed some really good shit in that regard. So I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm never somebody that's bought these games day one anyway, so I'm not in that position.
I mean, the problem is, and this is just the inherent problem of it. It's twofold. For me, there's a Resident Evil 4 direct problem, and that's the fact that it was the game of our college experience. My sophomore year, your freshman year, that we had a friend, the kid asked me very, like, honestly, you are heading into town. Can you please pick me up a copy of Resident Evil 4 for PlayStation 2? The day that it came out. And I went and I bought the kid a copy of it on release date, went back to it, and like sat and watched him play it until like he had played it to death. And then the next year, the kid's roommate was like, "Hey, you're in town. Can you get me the Wii version of Resident Evil 4?" So after watching them play it on PlayStation 2 to death, right? And it wasn't just my college friends, but like the people I still hung out with like from high school. That's all they ever wanted to do when it came to like hanging out and playing video games. So it was just everywhere. It was like this
weird.
super
My friends and I never
saturated
played
thing.
single player games in front of each other. We just didn't do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, usually it'd be like I'd have like a Game Boy or something. So like it worked out. Or like the high school friend had multiple TVs set up. Like he had a game room set up. So he would be playing on the main TV and I could be playing like Nintendo games or something like that on my own. But it's just like like the game was everywhere for me for like such a formative moment in my life.
Yeah.
And then it just colored it for me. That's just the facts of it.
Yeah. Have you played any of the Rose DLC for 8? You didn't.
No,
really
I haven't. Because of the factory. I'll be completely honest with you. If there's ever a really, really good sale, I'll probably pick it up because I'm interested in it.
Yeah. So most of the Rose stuff takes place in the Dimitrescu mansion there. There's just some really weird magic aspects to it that are not present in the main game. It gets really wild and heady in that regard. I liked what I saw of it. I have not played it either though.
I mean, the big thing for me is that I'm right now in a point where I'm enjoying video games again. I had hit like a level of fatigue. And maybe just because like it's kind of all we had for fun. Like, let's be honest about it. While we were all stuck inside, it's like you could game. And by the end of 2022, I was just like, nothing is working for me. Stray was something I was excited for, and then I played it, and it just left me wanting so much more in like something that happened about an hour into the game where I'm just like, I think I'm done with games right now. Like, I think I'm being too cynical in like my expectations for these games.
Stray is just like super chill. There's like nothing really like I never felt.
Please tell me why I didn't like Stray. No, I'm kidding. It's just I know why I
No,
didn't like Stray.
Stray for me weirdly was hitting a lot of the same notes that playing like Stardew Valley does, where like I could just like put some lo-fi music on, sit back, and just like wander around as a cat for a while. Like it didn't. There's not a lot of. I don't want to. Man, I was gonna say there's not a lot of energy in that game, but that's not fair because that's not true. It's just that where that energy is directed is not like running gun style, like getting your blood pumping, right? Like it's put more towards like the cerebral aspect of like, oh, I feel good, I solved this puzzle, like that endorphin rush, right? That kind of thing.
And
So I'd be curious to know where in Stray you kind of felt like you were cheated in that regard because man, I don't know.
I will tell you that I got to a point and I stopped playing, and I will tell you the point that I got to, and that was when there were fucking robots sitting around the town, and I had to do things for those fucking robots.
That's the gameplay. So you didn't like the game. That's fine. I just like the gameplay
I
of
loved
Stray is that you
everything
start to do,
up
like,
until
things.
we're fucking robots and we need you, Catman, to do things for us. Like the whole while I was exploring
The story of Stray.
yeah, I guess. I mean, the inherent gameplay loop is this fact that like I thought that the story of Stray was going to be you're this cat who falls into this town and you need to find your way out of it back to your friends.
No,
And
not
that's
in the least.
what it felt like. That's what it felt like, and that's what the game felt like.
I had no connotation that that's what that game was.
Well, that's how it starts. You're hanging out with your cat friends, and you fall down, and then you're like, "Oh, I'm in this hyper cyber city," and it's like now the cat needs to get out of the cyber city.
Like everything about that ad campaign was like, meet these robots that might have human souls in them, and make sure you help them so that you can help them get out of this town that might slowly be killing them. Like,
nope. I thought I just got to be a cat, and
you were lied to. Somebody failed in their mission to tell you what Stray was in advance because that was never the intention of that game.
The only thing
that box cover has a cat with a robot in the background.
I know that he was gonna get like the backpack, and I'm like, I'm okay with the backpack because it's like how it's gonna open doors, and it's like, and now there's a cat, so like it's gonna accidentally wind up stuck in this fucking backpack because like it's gonna be poking around, and so
he's the delivery cat,
and all that stuff kind of happened, and then it was like, oh, we're a happy little village of robots, but we need your help, cat, and I'm just like, I don't want to help you. Delete.
Yeah. No, so you didn't like Stray at all because you didn't like the basic story or game mechanics or game loop of Stray, which is it's fine.
I like being a cat. Yeah. I like going meow
and pawing at you should play cat lateral damage. If you just want to walk around and just be a cat, play cat lateral damage. It's
now I've been hurt by being a cat in games. Stray ruined it. If I'm playing as a cat in the game, I'm out. I'm fucking out.
This is like getting into Mario and finding out like you have to jump on like mushrooms. Like, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to just like eat mushrooms and get big and wander around this really cool mushroom kingdom. And it's like, nope, there's a job to do.
That's what I thought Stray was going to be. I didn't think there was going to be a job other than.
I didn't think there was going to be a goal or an end to this. You just.
I thought the goal was getting out of the city.
Is that what you want?
I wanted to escape from the city as the cat.
I mean, that is the goal, but that is achieved by helping out the Denzians of said city so that you can figure out what's going on. Like, and you find out all this weird shit about
Stop. Well, don't ruin it in case I decide someday to go back. But like, no, I'm just like, I don't want to do this. And then I'm like, you know what? And honestly, I think it's me bringing I was being cynical about gaming at the time, and I've sloughed that off. Like, as much as GGDP was like this gross experience 3 times through, I had fun with it until it got to that level. Kirby's Return to Dreamland has been a blast. I started up Metroid Prime Remastered. I had no idea that Kirby was going to like throw additional levels at me. I'm like, there's going to be more, right? Because I need 120.
Oh, yeah, no, man. There's like some really crazy stuff in that. Have you done any of the mini-game stuff?
I haven't done any of that. I've done like the challenges, but like I collected the lore and I'm like, oh, cool. Now we're going to go. And I bet there's going to be like a big boss fight. And then it's like, oh, no, there's like more levels. And I'm like, this is cool. But I did want to try to start Metroid. So I started it. The controls are so good in freaking Metroid Prime Remastered. And I know that like that shouldn't be a surprise because it's kind of what everybody has been saying for weeks now. But when one of my like hurdles to enjoyment for the original game was just how clunky the controls felt, especially because I was playing first person games on the GameCube that didn't feel as clunky because I wanted to be ready for a first person experience. Like, I don't want that to be the thing I don't like. And then still, they Nintendo'd it up, which is not surprising, right?
Yeah.
But it's...
I mean, I think, like, just, it's funny that this is the exact same thing that you felt about playing the Resident Evil 4 demo, is, oh man, they fixed the controls. I mean, I think what this speaks to is just how, like, how hard it was to get that sort of shit right back then. We really take for granted that the ones that did get it right, like, really fucking knocked it out of the park. Like, how cool it was that, like, 3D movement worked as well as it did in Mario 64 and shit like that. Like, yeah. And to the point where there are these games that are divisive for people. Resident Evil 4, you know, famously, people were on the fence about, like, well, they still got these shitty Resident Evil controls, but man, the rest of the game's so good, I guess I'll deal with it. Was a pretty common consensus about that game, right? But the point of the matter is just like we were at a weird time and trying to figure out how to move around spaces still, and like having a gimmick was better than trying to do it right and failing, right? So Resident Evil leans into this gimmick of tank controls rather than taking the risk of trying to do something else and it fucking the whole game up.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, like, it's why I'm not as nostalgic for those. First of all, because where nostalgia would come in for me is seeing N64 and PlayStation games, and they're kind of being that bit where, like, I can tell that this is supposed to be a market improvement over what I played when I was younger, but what I played when I was younger, like, kind of still looks better, right? Yeah. So it's that... I can't go back to those games and be like, man, this looks so good compared to today, because it doesn't. But this sweet spot that Nintendo is currently in, where they are remaking GameCube games, like even to the fact that like Tales of Symphonia got a remaster release.
Yes, it did.
And it's like, and gosh, Super Mario Sunshine, the way that they did that, all of these games, I mean, even going as far as The Wind Waker on Wii U. Right? Sure, you can't play it because your Wii U probably killed itself, right? And that's not me being a jerk. That
or you sold it for a Switch.
Well, that's what I did. But I mean, have you seen all of these reports about Wii U's just bricking because of the materials that were used to construct them?
I mean, I'm not surprised. What are we, 10 years out from the release of the Wii U? I mean, you know, that technology should only be expected to last 3 to 5 years. So it sucks that, like, here we are and people can't play this thing that they love and adore. But I also, at the same time, I think we're more than past whatever point we should have expected them to keep working.
Right. I mean, at this point, we should be surprised when our Switches are still working, knock on wood, right? Right. But yeah, so going towards it, and that... I really like that they're capturing this GameCube stuff. I would really like to see Wii stuff captured, and to the way that they did something like Skyward Sword, where we gave it like some rudimentary just controller like interface between you and the game. Ditto something like Super Mario Galaxy, though they botched up some bits of that. I
mean, Skyward Sword was no peach either. Like, it was one of the big things that I kept talking about as I was playing that game. Is that game would be great if it wasn't for the stupid controls. Even with what they fixed, it still really has that Wii stink on it, and that's going to be a hard nut for them to crack. Like Nintendo, as it is, usually takes 5 or 6 years to figure this shit out. I don't know if they'll ever really get through the Wii nonsense of the motion controls. And we say that now. At the time, it made the Wii the best-selling system of all time, right? Yeah. So like we can sit here and shit on it now because it was such a big deal when it was out. But yeah, like I don't know if they'll ever get past that.
Right. But Wii U, we've seen some games move forward, like most notably Mario Kart Deluxe 8, which you and I just raced all the new tracks and had a fucking blast doing.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, with Birdo.
Yeah, with Birdo or Birdie.
We gotta get a Birdo. We gotta get a Birdo run going.
We do
Anybody
need to
out
get
there
a
interested
Birdo
in
run
playing
happening.
that game with us and doing a Birdo run? Like, yeah.
Yeah. We'll give you the information at the end of it. Get in touch with us.
I wish you could make character sounds in that game. Now that Birdo's in that game, it's the one thing that I feel is missing is like taunts. Oh my god, can you imagine just like 9 Birdos just like?
I mean, there's also the fact that like that. Let's talk about it. Everybody else is talking about it. There's apparently going to be 5 more characters. You're right. They had to even out the character selection screen. So it looks like there are 5 question mark characters that might be coming.
I don't just so I'm happy that I'm somewhat proven correctly, but I will not eat my cake until it's in front of me
Fair,
because they could release. I do think that it implies that there's going to be at least another character released or two other characters released. I'm trying to remember what we had figured out in order to like. I do not put it past them to reconfigure that screen again once there's other characters. You know, once there is a second or a third. But yeah, when they released Birdo, one of the big things is it also, as I mentioned, reconfigured the entire character select screen, and there are currently 5 question marks sitting there. So I mean, like, if we were going to talk about who it probably is, like, Diddy Kong is definitely up there. I still put Captain Falcon up there because they have a Captain Falcon board. It'd be ridiculous to not opt him in as a driver at some point. Yeah. They could do Sonic. Like, I think that with everything that they've done with Sonic in the past,
might be happening. I wouldn't be surprised.
So, you know what would be the funniest thing ever? You mentioned Piranha Plant. I also want to get that one out there because that's
Piranha,
also a good guess. Yeah. But my big one that I think would be a funny as shit get with everything else in the world would be Solid Snake.
That would be
when they introduced Solid Snake to the Smash series. It was such a glorious moment of everything coming together in video game nerddom, and people loved it. And Solid Snake is now a lot of mains for a lot of people. A lot of lineups carry Snake. Like, so I think it would just be hilarious if they introduced Solid Snake as a driver in this game.
So the only bar to entry on there is, if he were going to come, I don't think it would happen until a second booster pack.
Yeah, sure.
Or like a character pack.
Also, I know I'm like, that is like the farthest of reaches.
Right.
But if you think about what they've done in the past with the Smash roster, it really does kind of open the door to fucking anything in this.
I don't disagree. But I guess the reason why I think it's going to be Nintendo characters is because this first booster pass is part of the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pass. So it's free. It's included with that.
Who's the little dude that spits up black spike balls? What's his name? I forget what he's called. Huh?
No, that's not Spiny. What is his name? Is it Spike? They're Spikies, I think.
I could see them pulling in like Spike. I could see them pulling in Piranha Plant. I could see them pulling in all
Hammer
sorts of
Brother.
cool,
I think would be very interesting. Paratrooper is something that doesn't exist.
The Hammer Bro is kind of covered by the Koopa, though, isn't he? Like
technically, a Hammer Brother is different, but he has a helmet on.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
There's the thing, and you can do color options there because you can make it a Boomerang Brother. You can make it a Fire Brother.
I think the big dude, the Charging Chuck, would be a really fun one.
And that makes sense, too. A lot of people are saying Charging Chuck. I think Funky Kong is someone that I would like. It'd be huge if it happened, but he was like
such a stretch.
Wii, man. He was the character on the Wii version.
If you were going to give odds to it, I would give like a 1 to 10 on Diddy Kong. I would probably give like a 1 to 100 on Funky.
Oh, yeah. Diddy Kong's happening. His freaking car from Double Dash is chassis that you can choose for your cart. So Barrel Train is there. Diddy cannot be far behind.
Is Waluigi a driver yet? I forget. And I always forget where Waluigi shows up and doesn't.
Yeah, he's a driver.
He's already a driver. Okay, good.
So I mean, all the Nintendo, like Pauline, I think would be good, but Pauline would also be a new driver. Like, that's the other thing. I expect that for ease of access, it's going to be people who have been drivers before.
Oh, who have they not included already? I didn't even think about that.
So like that's why PD Piranha, Funky Kong, Diddy Kong, Paratrooper, Rob the Robot.
Rob would be fun. Rob is, he's such a weird concept. Such a weird concept, but like for a failed product.
Yeah, I mean, he worked out in the beginning for the NES. It's just that he didn't go anywhere from it. Like, yeah. That's the thing. Like, those are people who have existing character models.
Doesn't Rob the Robot show up in like Wall Street or something? Like serving drinks in Wall Street. Like they have a Rob the Robot roll in.
Well, he doesn't move. So like Rocky,
I know.
Yeah.
He also doesn't serve liquor, but it is clearly a Rob the Robot. Like there's like a bit. I'm pretty sure it's Wall Street.
It could be Wall Street. Yeah.
Because he goes to visit Michael Douglas's like compound essentially to like kind of learn the ropes of what he's going to be getting into. And when he arrives there, one of the first things that happens is what is clearly a Rob the Robot with like a bolted in like tray like rolls up and turns around to him and offers him a drink.
Well, I'll have to look into it now. I've never seen Wall Street. I will. That there's a confession.
Oh man,
I'm a big
damn
Charlie
good
Sheen
film.
fan now, apparently too.
Apparently, no, like still holds up. And I will say the sequel, Money Never
Money Never
Sleeps,
Sleeps. Yeah.
is a really interesting revisit to that world. Not as it's not as much of a gut punch as the first movie is, but I mean, I think the first movie is still one of the greatest films of all time.
Wow. I mean, it's something I've always meant to watch. It's just it's never the stars.
It's also
never
really
aligned.
interesting now, 30 years later, that we all have. We're not experts. Nobody is. No, like in the financial world is a fucking like labyrinth of bullshit. But we're all much more savvy about that, like the possibilities of that world. We have a lot more just kind of colloquial knowledge about like that world, right? And so watching it now and kind of understanding some of the shit that's going on, because that movie very much at the time was kind of trying to explain to people what's happening. So it's a different kind of way to view that film now that we've kind of been through a lot of the shit that movie was trying to warn us could happen.
My movie for that was always Boiler Room. I really liked Boiler Room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That movie's too intense. I say that recommending Wall Street.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I will say Boiler Room gets a lot more intense. Like Wall Street is like a crime thriller, like whereas like Boiler Room is like a fucking dark thriller. Like there's some shit happens in Boiler Room, if I'm remembering it correctly, that is much more dangerous than in Wall Street.
Oh, when his spoilers for Boiler Room, when his parents are like, we put all our money into this because he didn't know that it was a
straight
scam.
From Wall Street, but yes,
yeah. No, but like the way that scene plays out, it just like it is such a gut punch in that moment.
Yeah.
Like it's. I mean, again, I've never seen. I mean, that makes sense because like that would be the whole thing of it is like not truly understanding it. And of course, if your family sees this success, they're gonna want a little piece of it. Like that just makes sense.
I don't want to ruin Wall Street for you now. Go watch Wall Street.
All right, I'll watch Wall Street before the next episode.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, speaking of the next episode, we should probably be thinking about the ways to wind this one down. So, is there anything else you want to make sure we touch on before we end it up, or?
We're kind of sitting in the middle of the banks blowing up right now, which we didn't talk about because like we're sitting in the middle of it, and hopefully it doesn't end up affecting too many people. So for anybody that doesn't know, Silicon Valley Bank was a bank that kind of primarily worked with startups in the Silicon Valley area, and they apparently are just going under. We don't have all the information yet about what's going to shake out. But basically, like, starting with Friday, people were suddenly not getting paid, and not just at the bank, but like in other places that use the bank as like their primary service for paychecks and stuff. Like people so there's already been people affected by this. And there's talk that on Monday, like basically there's just going to be a bunch of companies that just can't open. And that sucks. So, we're keeping an eye on that, especially out here. Although I will say living in Silicon Slopes out in Utah is a whole different ballgame because, there is a lot of, I really benefited from Utah being kind of insular. I've talked before about how there's a lot of like we take care of our own out here, but we also don't take care of anybody fucking else. And in that regard, a lot of the small startups and companies and tech giants out here all kind of get behind Utah-based banks. So there's a few different ones out here, the biggest one being like Mountain America Credit Union and stuff like that. Like, so they're actually kind of safeguarded from this. Not everybody. I'm sure we will find out about some people out here involved with this shit, but we're kind of safeguarded from this particular issue with Silicon Valley Bank because a lot of the companies out here were working with like accredited state institutions. So that feels pretty good that we're like that it doesn't feel like the entire tech industry as a whole is going to be affected by this, but there are going to definitely be people that are, and that's going to suck.
That information about Silicon Valley Bank to me really felt like a 5 p.m. email on a Friday. And it's one of those situations where like, all right, so I'm aware of it, but I can't fucking do anything at this point. Monday is when I will really
I'll be curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to find out a lot about what companies are involved in what, like there's been some news about how like apparently Roku had like $500 million tied up in this bank that they might just lose. And like, I don't know what that means. They've been trying so hard to push like with stuff this year with like the Weird Al movie and a whole bunch of other like new series and stuff. Hell, you had me watch Anger Management, the TV show, and guess where the entire series is available for free? Like Roku TV. You just give them an email and you can get into Roku TV for free, and the entire series of anger management is right at your fingertips. A bunch of other series and movies too. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that we don't know that's going to be affected by this, and that's going to be wild.
Yeah.
But that's all I really have to say at this point, because like I said, we don't really know anything.
It is an emerging story at its best right now. And we will I'm definitely interested. I'm invested, but not in the bank, but in what's going on. But it is one of those things where until open of business on Monday, and they seem to have a beautiful plan that they hope will happen, but I don't think it's going to work at the end of the day, right? Like,
well, yeah, and
like,
and like basically what you're referring to is the insurance stuff, where apparently that every person in this bank was supposedly insured up to $250,000, but when you talk about groups like Roku that have $500 million, like in there, like that doesn't cover everything.
A pittance. That's a pittance that they're getting back. Like it is, it's scary stuff. It's really scary stuff, but. It's also weird because, like, the original article that you sent to me says that, like, the banks will be opening back up on Monday as this other institution.
Yeah,
so, like,
but I think that what's not being clear there is what they're going to be is just a holding company for people to get what money they can from them. But again, if they're only insured up to $250,000, there might not be enough money for everybody to get their money out, because everything's a fucking bullshit lie and money is imaginary. So like a lot of the times when banks talk about having $3 billion, they don't mean on hand. They might have $1 billion on hand. So if everybody pulls their money out at once, they're fucked. And that's exactly what they're trying to avoid by creating this like holding company to manage the money, to dole it out properly. And I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see what happens on Monday.
So yeah, but it's something to be aware of, and it's what it is. It's perfect 11:55 material for the Say report. Additionally, and here's the other thing about daylight savings time. Do you know why daylight savings time the switch happens at 2 a.m.?
I mean, so that it's just like center of the country and everybody's just kind of either early or late, I would assume.
It's because of trains. Because like apparently like no trains ever depart around 2 a.m. So it doesn't really affect the people on the road. They just adjust their clocks apparently. But like they looked at it and Amtrak was like, we don't have any trains departing at 2 a.m. So do it at 2 a.m. and it won't affect anybody.
So losing an hour means, well, we normally get to this place an hour early and just fuck around for an hour, but now we'll just get there on time. Yeah. Whereas the other end, when time gets added to them, do you know what trains do in that case?
Yeah.
They just fucking
park. Yeah.
They're just like, we're going to sit on our ass wherever we're at 2 a.m. We're going to stop the train and we're just going to sit here for an hour. But I ended up on a train one night on a daylight savings time going in the wrong direction. And I was like, why aren't we moving now?
Trains just do that usually too. Coming like Baltimore to Rhode Island, there's a section where they're like, so we just stopped the train for 2 hours here. Well, why? Because there's no room for us at Grand Central Station.
Yeah, exactly. There's nowhere for us to pull in anywhere else, so we got to sit on this weird sidetrack
for a while, and then we go. I'm like, okay, cool. So like, thank you. I don't know if I'll ever take the train again at night, but it's good to know.
I mean, that's what they used to do, and they'd let you like off so you could like piss in the woods and stuff. But seen too many Agatha Christie movies. Sorry.
Jesus, it's okay. So that whole thing. But now I am convinced that one of the reasons we keep that 2 a.m. in addition to the fact that the railways are completely the big brother controlling force behind everything in our society. Don't look into it because it'll scare you. I think it's also that Saturday Night Live isn't affected. Because it always is a Saturday into a Sunday. And after watching, and not even watching, just existing in the same room where my family was watching Saturday Night Live last night, I'm like, it's for this terrible comedy to make sure that they can start their show and that it will be done. And then the time that they don't want to affect the liveness of Saturday Night Live.
Lorne Michaels, the true leader of the cabal. No, we're not doing that.
The really crazy thing was last night waking up at 4 a.m. So I have gone through the jump forward and like this weird brief minute where you were 3 hours ahead of me.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something like Lorne Michaels was in the shadows of your room.
No, stop giving Lorne Michaels superpowers, because
I heard you
eventually it's
wanted to
going to
talk
get
about
dogmatic, man.
Coneheads.
And no,
You wanted to talk about Coneheads, Devin.
no.
You will. You will talk about it for me and give me more power.
Okay, Lorne, thank you. No, we already talked about enough things for Lorne. Buddy. All right. So that's this episode of the Say Report. That's a crazy theory that I came up with. And Sejin and I are back on the same time now. Thank goodness. I'm just happy that I was able to force myself to go to sleep an hour earlier so that I'm not affected by the time change at all.
Good for you.
I'm sorry, Sejin. But yeah, so this has been the episode of the Say Report. Thanks for sticking in there with this one. This one was scatterbrained and just a whole lot of fun for us. So I hope it was a whole lot of fun for you, the listener. If you have any comments for the show, or you own the DLC for Mario Kart 8 and you want to be a big part of our all Birdo race, Sejin is going to be putting that together so he can be reached at the Say Report on Twitter. So let us know and we'll try to get something going.
Yeah, and we're gonna have to fill out that roster because I think there's only 9 different Birdos. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty. And
There's
so
only
we
9
need,
separate colors of Birdo.
Yeah, so we need like 3 to fill out the 12, right? So if you know what other character we should then fill out the rest of the roster with, hit Devin
Shy Guy. It's Shy Guy. Don't hit me up at Devin D. Decker. The answer is Shy Guy, because both Shy Guy and Birdo were introduced in Super Mario Brothers 2. So it only makes sense, right? Am I wrong?
No, I was thinking maybe like Birdo and the Princesses or something fun like that. But if you just want to do Shy Guy, yeah, we can keep it.
Well,
simple.
They have the colors too, right? They kind of.
I understand all the reasons you would pick Shy Guy, but that seems too obvious to me. So.
That's true. So let's start the debate at Devin D. Decker. I look forward to hearing from you. And I also look forward to Will bringing us home. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy it.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.